Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and before we get into my co-host joining me or kind of the main topic of this episode, I want to personally address a lot of the things that have kind of come to light over this last weekend. For those that don't know, there was kind of an ongoing thread of abusers and people in the community kind of being outed publicly, some of which we'd known about for many years or kind of had been whispered about and hushed about and whatnot. And one that hit close to home for us here at That Nerdy Site was Logan Wilkinson was implicated in some kind of patterns of abuse over with irrational passions. And I've kind of come out and said, firstly, I want to thank everybody that shared their stories. Kaylee Woomer, who kind of kicked a lot of the conversation off, responding to a tweet I had made, and then a lot of the a lot of the team at Irrational Passions kind of expounded upon the issues with Logan that they had. I will say kind of a lot of what I said on Twitter in kind of my response. I knew that Logan had personal issues with Quentin Hoffman, who the three of us a couple years ago even were hosting a West Wing podcast together that we did for about a season and a half of that show. And so I knew that there were tensions between those two, and they had, very conflicting personalities. I was unaware to the extent that anybody would have classified it as abuse or really harassment to that degree. So a lot of that was news to me as I was seeing it, and I spent a lot of the day on Saturday when all this was kind of coming out, reading everybody's stories, reaching out to all of my friends over at Irrational Passions, Quinn included, and basically saying, hey, I knew that there had been issues. I didn't know they were this bad. I'm sorry if my decision to bring Logan on to That Nerdy Site when we launched came across therefore insensitive as a result of that, or if any kind of interactions we've had since. There was a lot of kind of at PAX East even, there was a lot of like intermingling between That Nerdy Site's team and Irrational Passions team, and it's very clear that some of them had not moved on from the pain that Logan had caused them as a result. That said, we've kind of talked within our team that we have not had those experiences with Logan. So we're still trying to navigate the situation and really kind of understand as many sides of the conversation as we can. And I'm still very much processing things on my end. So I don't really have a definitive kind of game plan yet. We're recording this Sunday, the day after a lot of these kind of revelations came to light. So we're still very much among our team kind of processing and coping and dealing with our friends that were hurting, and our friends that were causing the pain or had caused the pain. So we're still trying to kind of figure things out here, but obviously this is the first show that we're putting out after all of this is coming out and coming to light, and so I didn't want to just dive into a Persona 5 Royal Spoilercast without saying something to address things. So hopefully we will have kind of a more concrete plan moving forward. I think I'm kind of honing in on the how Logan's relationship with That Nerdy Site will look moving forward, but I want to still run it by the rest of the team at That Nerdy Site and make sure everybody's okay with how we're going to try and move forward before I make one ultimate decision one way or the other. But I want to emphasize first and foremost that I feel my heart goes out to the people who Logan hurt. Logan recognizes that he hurt people and has apologized as well, and realizes that he could have absolutely handled things better. And I definitely do not want to diminish or take away from the pain that those people are feeling and expressed, and I thank them for coming forward with their stories so that I can absolutely be mindful and try and be diligent as we kind of move forward with That Nerdy Site, knowing to look for signs and try and learn from the the issues that have occurred in the past. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Unfortunately, yeah, it's you know, a lot of people might be tuning in to, you know, figure out, are we just cutting ties with Logan? What's going on there? And I don't have a definitive answer for that yet. As I said on Twitter, I'm still very much kind of processing and trying to figure out the different degrees of what's going on. I personally want to believe the best in Logan. He's a dear friend of mine. I absolutely don't dispute or deny that he hurt people, but he has not hurt anybody within our team. And so the hope is that he is trying to grow and change and has been changing and growing in the last year. And I don't want to immediately diminish all of the growth and work that he's done based on kind of his unfortunate and negative interactions with another site. So I'm sorry if that's not a, you know, more definitive answer for people yet. I will hopefully have one here in the coming days as we kind of, again, decide as a team how to move forward with That Nerdy Site and our relationship with Logan. And hopefully I will have more to report soon, but I didn't want to just completely gloss over or not address the issue at hand here. So that's kind of where we're at right now, and I just kind of wanted to share that with everybody to kick off this show. But with that unfortunate business kind of we're going to move on into what has been our original plan and had been our original plan for a few days before all this came to light, of kind of our topic of the show this week. Frank and I have been waiting for Cameron to finish up Persona 5 Royal so we could all sit down and do a spoiler cast on the show. So joining me this week, I do have Frank Pisani. How you doing, Frank?
Hanging in there. How's everybody doing?
Doing okay. Yeah, it has been a rough weekend, but certainly it's important conversations that are being had. So I don't want to, again, diminish any of that. And then Cameron Abbott is also here. How you doing, Cameron?
Man, I couldn't have finished this game a week early, like a week earlier.
Nope.
I had to finish it this week.
I mean, sometimes life hits you like that.
Yeah, it's never like a convenient time to talk about hard truths. So
yeah. But again, important conversations that are happening, and I hope that whatever way we end up going on this, kind of moving forward, I hope that we are able to all grow and learn from and move on with this in a positive light, and kind of learn from the mistakes of our pasts. Some general housekeeping before we dive full on in. If you do like what you hear on this show, you can always subscribe, rate, review the podcast everywhere you can. If you're feeling generous, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. And if you do, we'll give you a shout out, a welcome shout out here on the podcast. No new patrons to shout out this week, but I do want to give a shout out to our weekly producer, Jason Bellevue, who again, we wish all the best recovering in the Bellevue household. So the main thrust of the show, as we've touched on, is going to be the Persona 5 Royal Spoilercast here. I finished the game a couple weeks ago. Frank, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, Frank, you finished it first probably, and then I sat down with it, and then Cameron just finished it this last week. So admittedly, like, some of it's going to be a little foggy for me because I played Final Fantasy VII Remake, and then I went straight into Persona 5 Royal after I had already kind of said I wasn't going to dive into it because I'd already played 200 hours of the first game. And then since then, I think I've played like The Last of Us Part 1 twice, and I'm almost done with The Last of Us Part 2 at this point. So lots of other games have kind of come and gone in my time since finishing Persona 5 Royal. But let's kind of start with just our general experiences with Persona in general, but also the original Persona 5. So I'll kick it off. My Persona history is, I think, the Persona history a lot of people maybe have, in that I got introduced to it via Persona 4 Golden on the Vita. because Beyond would talk about it nonstop, and it was the like must-play game on the Vita. Now available on Steam for anybody that wants to go check that one out. And really enjoyed it. Played it 2 or 3 times in pursuit of that last hardcore reset trophy to get the platinum that I never got. So it's like one of my all-time gaming shame moments is that I have almost the platinum in that game. But I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the story for it, and it was very much for me as somebody who grew up with like Final Fantasy but has been disappointed in Final Fantasy in recent years. It was the evolution of JRPGs that I had been looking for. And so when Persona 5 came out, I played it immediately and basically played through, as I said, kind of 200 hours. I played through the game twice to platinum it at the time and really enjoyed it. I've kind of always gone back and forth because the big debate is which of those games is better. And ultimately, I think I like Persona 5 better as a cohesive game, even if I might like the kind of core cast of characters in your party from Persona 4 Golden better. But that might have even changed with kind of the new additions here in Persona 5 Royal. So let me kick it over to you, Frank, as the person who kind of championed Persona 4 Golden as our very first pick in that Ultimate Video Game List Show Season 1. What's your kind of history with Persona?
Yeah, so similarly for me, it kind of starts out with Persona 4 Golden on Vita. That was definitely, I think, like the must-have for everybody who has a Vita, and I definitely think everybody, especially now that it's on PC, should at least go in and play it. And that's where it started for me. And that was also like one of the first JRPGs I ever really actually played and finished. Like before that, they were like I could never actually get into them. And I was happy to finally get like hooked by one and just go all the way through and then basically go back and do the New Game Plus. And now ever since then, I've been a huge Persona fan with 5 and then Royale. And then I've even gone back and I started 3. I never finished it on Vita. And then I also have like even done deep dives into 1 and 2. At this point, I'm all about Persona.
Nice. Cool. How about you, Cameron?
So I'm a little bit different. When everybody was kind of clamoring about Persona 4 Golden being like this incredible game, I didn't own a Vita at the time. So I ended up actually picking up the ROM on the PS3 when the PS3 had a like PSN
the
copy
PS Classics
the
kind
PS
of thing.
Classic, the PS Classic version of Persona 4 Standard. And so I played through that and I beat that, and then got a Vita, played through Golden. Golden, of course, is the superior version of that game. It does exactly what like Royale does, and where it brings like way more content, but also way more quality of life bonuses to it. And there's something very special about Persona 4 as a story and as a game. And Persona 4 Golden as a game and a story is it can't like George Cruz Alvarez from Over at Irrational Passions, I think is quoted as saying like Persona 4 Golden finds you at a particular time in your life. You don't find it. Like it's a game that comes to you.
That's very true.
And I've never heard anybody really able to like full on be like, oh, that's weird because like Persona 4 Golden came to me at a time when my life was perfect and wonderful and had zero impact on me emotionally. So like Persona 4 Golden, even though I had played through Persona 4 on the PS3 already, and I was like, wow, this is a really great game, really great characters and story and everything that's going on here. I love it. And then, but when I played it on PS Vita and played the Golden version, emotionally totally different experience. And I was like, how, like it's the emotional change, and what I got out of Golden was much more than I was getting out of the standard game. And not for any particular reason than just the time that I was playing it. So I fell really deep into kind of like the rabbit hole of the lore of the Persona universe and how it relates to the Shin Megami Tensei series and the Devil Summoner games.
Of course you did.
To nobody's surprise. I went back and like I watched like retrospectives on like all sorts of different retrospectives about like Persona 1 and Persona 2, Innocent Sin and Persona 2 Eternal Punishment, which is they're two actually separate games.
It's a duology.
It's a duology where Eternal Punishment is actually a sequel to Innocent Sin, but they didn't call it Persona 3. they just put it together the way that they did, and the story that tells is like way cool, like Mondo cool. Like there's so many cool things about Persona and the Shin Megami Tensei series as like storytelling and kind of like the approach to it that I think Persona 5 is this really cool culmination of all of that. Persona 5 Royale even more so in not just the Persona series, but kind of Persona 5 I think is the first game since Persona 2 to really pull more from the Shin Megami Tensei side of things as far as like story elements go. And we'll get into that when we talk about the game proper, but it's just for me this has definitely been just like a series that I fell in love with. I've never been a guy who's like, yeah, I got like a waifu or whatnot, but Persona 4 Golden was like the first game where I was just like I don't understand why anybody wouldn't pick Naoto. Naoto's clearly best girl. Like, get out of here. Like that was a total like tonal shift for me. Like just the way that I embrace that game is different than the way I've embraced any other game, really. And Persona 5 Royale is. I originally wasn't going to pick it up and play it, but enough positive people came out about it. Alex O'Neill said it's his favorite game of all time. Cameron, like a lot of people out there have kind of like brought it up and when they reviewed it and said, this is the definitive way of playing this game. And I said, okay, I will drop another. Well, I dropped $60 for this game. I dropped way more for the original Persona 5. Like 120 for that one. But
Got one of them collector's editions.
dude, I got the Shujin Academy bag in my closet right now. You know it, bro.
Got
Nice.
that Morgana plush. He hangs out with me all the time.
I have a mini Morgana plush who hangs out on my bookcase. But like if I had got like the Morgana cat version, I would 100% have that in my bag all the time.
Nice. Very cool. Yeah, I obviously this much like Golden before it is the definitive way to play Persona 5. Christian Puente from the site has when I was playing it, he would kind of chime in and be like, "So I bought the original game, but I never actually booted it up. Should I play that one, or should I just dive in? Should I buy Persona 5 Royal and dive in?" I was like, "Well, honestly, Christian, I know you're not going to commit to playing 100 hours of this game, so I wouldn't say. I would say don't like spend any more of your money and just play the version you already own." But if you were going to, commit 100 hours into this game, this is the version to do it, obviously. So yeah, on that note, let's kind of dive into some, before we dive into full-on spoilers, let's talk about spoiler-free thoughts on Persona 5 Royal and how it stacks up. Frank, I'll kick it to you first.
Yeah, for me, I definitely think, kind of like you said, this is the definitive version of Persona 5 and definitely probably the best way to play it. I think like from the quality of life improvements, just actually playing the game is completely improved. Even when like it's not like it was awful or bad before, but the things they went in and changed make it so much smoother and faster to just try to get through things, especially if you've already played Persona 5 or any of the Personas. And then let alone the fact that like they just went in and kind of like Golden, they added so much new dialogue and like scenes when you hang out with confidants and your other social links and just like everything else that they've added in, and even the weird thing, and it's not weird, but like even the little thing where they just kind of call you up at the end and just talk to you on the phone. Like I think that's really cool, and I like a lot of the just everything they've added. Even the main story beats I think are amazing, and I'm definitely happy I went back and kind of like dove in for the full experience.
Yeah. How about you, Cam?
I think the best way to put it is to say, I know what I was going to do. So, yep, I'm going to do it. We're committing. Strap in, boys. I am thou, thou art I. Thou hast turned a vow into a blood oath. Thy bond shall be the wings of rebellion and break the yoke of thy heart. Thou hast awakened to the ultimate version of Persona 5 Royale, granting thee infinite power. This game's so damn good, guys. It's so damn good. It's that. I'll just leave it at that.
They
All
made
right.
a great game better.
Yeah, I mean, while I agree with all that, obviously this is very much the definitive way to play this game. I also found myself wishing I hadn't had to play like 80 hours of the game again, because it is very much backloaded. Like most of the new stuff in this game, there is bits and pieces sprinkled out in terms of the new story sprinkled out throughout, but most of this game is effectively after the end of the original game. And as somebody who, like I said, put 200 hours into the original game, 200 probably 200 plus, doing two full playthroughs of it, there was so much of this game where I was like, I appreciate these quality of life changes, but I would have much rather just played like a DLC extension somehow of the original, or I would have rather not played the original game and then played this one, I think is where I ultimately come down on it. Like, yes, again, definitive way to play it, but this is not a game I personally feel like I needed to play through 3 times. So that, like, I'm much more mixed on it than I think you guys are, as a result of that. Like, I do love that, like, I want to say my total game time on this was like 110 hours, 113 hours, something like that. And given that like 20 hours of that is completely new content, it's really cool that my game time is not 130 hours, because all of the ways they streamline combat and kind of action throughout the rest of the game cuts out that 20 hours, so that you're basically getting pretty much the same length of playtime as you would have had in the original Persona 5, but you're getting so much more story. So like, I very much appreciated that, but at the same time, like, I remember sitting there 10 or 12 hours in being like, I'm only through the first palace. This is going to be a long one. And then especially some of the palaces that I didn't like in the base game, or that just felt really long in the base game, going back to them and them still feeling really long in this, made trying to get to the end and the new stuff a little bit more of a chore. I do love the new stuff, and it makes up for it, but ideally, yeah, I would have much rather only put in like the 20 hours of new stuff rather than the other 80 hours of kind of revisiting all that other stuff. So it, like, I definitely think I'm the coolest of the table on that. But if you are new to Persona, this is absolutely the Persona to play. I will definitely say that. So with that out of the way, let's dive into kind of the more spoiler-filled section of the conversation. We kind of have this broken up into a variety of kind of topics. One of the first ones I want to tackle is kind of the changes to combat and the changes to the palaces, kind of get everybody's kind of opinions on those things. So some of the notable elements here on changes to the combat that we can dive into, specifically, or just kind of use as kind of reference points are, you had the baton pass that was originally in the base game locked behind, characters' social links. So you had to level your relationship up with them before you could do that. The fact that that's available right out the gate absolutely helps, speed up some of those combat things. You have the new Showtime attacks. You have the grappling hook that kind of helps maneuver through some areas. You have the new will seeds in palaces, kind of 3 collectibles and a mini boss that you can kind of find in each palace. You have ammo gets replenished after every fight automatically. I love the little justification that they had for that of like, the enemies are going to see your gun and think it's loaded, so it's loaded. I was like, that's cool, easy enough. And then lastly, there were like exploding monsters that kind of you could kill, and then they would blow up and do damage to everybody else on the field. So of those things, or any things that I missed, are there any kind of standouts and highlights that you guys want to tackle? Cam, I'll throw it to you first on this one.
Standout, just from what you said, I wanted to add on to that. The exploding monsters, the more damage you do to that exploding monster, the more damage it does when it explodes as well.
Very true. Yeah.
It correlates. It's such a great way of quick pacing otherwise tedious like grind battles, and making them interesting. Because also, if you don't kill them off the bat, they get enraged and they like attack you twice, and they're dicks, and so you want to try to kill them first.
Yeah.
Great. I love the bringing back the reload, giving us a reload after the fight for guns, which made them feel much more useful.
Yeah, I definitely found myself using the guns more this time around.
100%, especially since the way that guns attack stacks towards the end of the clip really made it actually worth, even if the enemies weren't weak to them, to like get around, like if they had like physical attack defenses or like strength resistance, whatnot. It was useful to do that instead of wasting SP for magic. um I like definitively like the biggest thing for me that I kind of pull from a lot of the changes is uh I really enjoy the two new confidants, but and Kasumi and Dr. Marikechi.
The Maruki.
Maruki, sorry, what am I thinking?
A-
Because
Akechi.
I
Yeah,
combined Akechi and Maruki together. There we go.
Yeah, we had that back when we talked about Persona 4 on one of the shows or something. You said Akechi when you meant Adachi or something like that, and was like, yeah, that character type in both games, they didn't really differ their names too much.
Well, what do you want to call Akechi Goro all the time? Like I hate that that's his name. Like it says Goro Akechi, and all I can think of is the four-headed, like muscle-bound monstrosity from Mortal Kombat when I hear anybody say Goro.
You
I
mean
mean, that's
four-armed?
basically what he is.
You said four-headed. I said four-armed.
Four-armed. My apologies. I'm not all like I'm a bit tired. My apologies on that one.
Yeah. I mean, that would also be an interesting Mortal Kombat enemy, something with four heads.
Yeah, for sure. No, like in this case, it's like so. Like anybody goes Goro Akechi, and the only thing I can think of is like Akechi's head on top of like Goro's massive body, which is not too different from his father Shido's like final form.
Fair. Yep.
I will say that a lot of the like playing through it a second time now. So I never did the New Game Plus. I never got around to it with Persona 5 Standard Edition because I let a friend borrow it and he still technically has it. So like I've never gone back and replayed it, which made this my second playthrough. So a lot of like the stuff like, oh well, I remember from my first playthrough, I got to do this differently this time in order to like maximize efforts. I kind of know what this person's personality is a little bit like, so I can make better dialogue choices. I kind of know like some of the unlocks that you get, so you want to unlock this person earlier so that it will like kind of snowball effect into other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like for doing the fortune teller, the fortune arcana.
Yeah,
persona.
getting the affinity
Yep.
like reading that you can get will automatically kind of like add to the and not take up time. You can basically pick whoever you want to power up the relationship. And I was like, yep, that is. I learned that in my first playthrough. So I did it absolutely in my second playthrough of the game. And so this time around, I was like, yep, as soon as I get access to her, I'm leveling her up to get access to that ability.
I'm not gonna lie though, a big part of my motivation is because I wanted my 100,000 yen back. Like, like she takes
Fair.
100,000 yen, and it literally takes like 8 more persona, like or not persona, but social link unlocks in her confidant to like get your 100k back. And like by the time you get it back, it's like whatever. I'm making like way more of that whenever I go into mementos.
Yeah, I was never like hard up for cash in this game. In part, I think I don't know if you guys did this, but like if you had a Persona 5 original save on your system, it basically recognized that you had like the legacy version of the game, and so they gave you kind of a starter pack of like a whole bunch of things to start the new game with,
including money.
Yeah.
And they also carried over a lot of like because I got the DLC personas from the standard game, and they automatically unlocked them for me, and I was like, oh, that's awesome, thank you.
It said I got the bonus for having Persona 5, and then I never got any of those DLC personas.
Did you
and that was
did you
because-
check your box? Did you check your box in your room? I don't know what to tell you, man.
Well, that's what I was confused, is because I clicked on it and it gave me all the stuff. It was like, you got all this yen, you got all these other things, and then like everyone else had the DLC personas, and I didn't. I have no idea where they are.
Did you double check the box afterwards? I'm sure you did, but I'm just asking.
I feel like I did.
But maybe you didn't.
So the DLC personas, I never really like delved into the DLC personas, but those are, if you wanted to get them in the Velvet Room, they were basically $0 the first time you would buy them, and they would be like labeled DLC. But then if you wanted to like acquire them a second time, you had to pay whatever the full price for them was. So I don't know if that's what you're talking about, and you just didn't see them there, or.
But like, I don't even think they were in my compendium, like, because I know the Persona compendium, and I filled like half of it. But the thing is like I never saw any that were marked as DLC, or I never saw, because I know the Persona I was looking for is the Izanagi no Okami from Persona 4, which is like super
Oh yeah,
powerful in this game.
you would have seen it right away, both it and its Picaro version.
And neither were in my compendium, and I was like, this is, I don't know, I don't have an answer for this. I was just voicing, I guess I was legitimately confused why they weren't in my game and they were in everyone else's game.
That's
Yeah, that's
rough.
weird.
That's rough because Kaguya Picaro is such a good early persona to have because one she unlocks at like 16 or
Hmm.
some level 16, so you can actually like fuse it to get you can get a fusion for her to unlock like a bunch of that ability. But sure, her Shining Arrows ability is a attack all with like almighty, not almighty, but
The
with
blessing.
the blessing, and it does like multi-stacked lesser damage, but like if against like enemies weak to blessing, it's so good, especially early in the game when you face enemies that are weak to blessing, but you don't have a character that has that. Um, Super useful to use. I will say though that Kaguya Picaro, and then the really cool one that came out with this one that was Raul, who is like so the Ultimate Confidants after I think it's January 10th. If you go talk to your characters you already have a maxed out persona or maxed out confidant with,
Yeah.
their initial persona fuses with um, their trickster identity persona, which is what they unlock when you first get them in your party, and then the mythical legendary trickster persona that they get after you max out their confidant link merges and becomes essentially a more accurate, historically accurate version of their historical trickster that they're associated with. So, like for example, um, a great version of that
It combines their two persona forms.
yeah, but you get like so Ryuji's is originally Billy the Kid, not Billy the Kid,
Captain Kid.
Captain Kid. He gets a different named version of basically Son Goku, and then they fuse to become William, which is essentially like a modernized looking Captain Kidd, but it's more historically accurate to his name, and so you get that through all of these, and like who the kind of like historical mythical tricksters are kind of based off of, and like a more realistic version. It's really cool that that's the approach they took for it because in Persona 4 Golden, the ultimate versions were kind of just like a rehash or a more enhanced version of their ultimate Persona forms. And to kind of like take a different kind of approach to it was something that I really enjoyed. Raul is essentially Arsene's alter ego from the books, and that he's from the book series that he's from, the Phantom Thief, and he is. It's really cool to see that representation as well. So like I 100% when I had to do, and to the point that I was making earlier. Sorry, we got kind of like lost off track. My apologies. I took us right off the rails.
Yeah.
I saw the rails and I was like, cool, let's go right past them. Back to the original topic though that I wanted to get to was Akechi. Akechi's confidant to me is probably like the most significant change that I think has the most impact.
Well, I don't want to dive into. I want to talk
Yeah.
about kind of the new confidant stories as kind of their own topic.
Oh, and I want to as well, but that's basically where I was ending. Like that's where I'm gonna stop my long
Okay.
diatribe about what I enjoyed that's new in this game.
Okay. Well, yeah, and so specifically, we're looking at changes to combat first, as
Yeah.
for what's new in this game. Real quick, Frank, did you going back to your DLC issue? Did you download the Legacy DLC bundle? That was basically a free add-on
I
to
must
anybody who bought Persona 5 Royal.
I must not have, because I mean I bought the steelbook version of the game. I had to cancel the collector's edition because I moved and it was going to be sent to the wrong address. I had to cancel it and I got the steelbook. So I had the disc version. So I guess if it didn't come like with it installed and I had to go in and download it, I guess I didn't download it.
Yeah, because there was basically two things that we're I think kind of talking about. One is like if it sees that you have a saved version of Persona 5, you got a whole bunch of added stuff, and then there was a free DLC bundle that you could get that basically gave you all of the DLC from the original Persona 5 in your Persona 5 Royal that would give you kind of all the costumes, and I think that's where you got all of the DLC Persona and stuff like that. So it sounds like maybe you just didn't grab that item. Did you? Because did you also have like the different costumes from the first game?
No, I don't think so. I didn't. I
Okay.
Oh,
never
there you
really
go.
pay attention to the costumes too much, though.
Yeah, that's fair. So yeah, I think that's probably what happened is that you just didn't go into like the add-on section of PSN and grab that free DLC download. So if you hop back into it, that's what I would go and check out. But Frank, how about what kind of changes in the combat space of the game did you really kind of that really drew to you?
I loved a lot of what they had changed. I think the baton pass is one of the probably the biggest things because like the first time I played Persona 5, I like that was barely a feature I ever got to use. And doing my new game plus run when I maxed out everybody, it became much more useful because everybody in the entire team had the baton pass, and it was a much more like useful, critical part of the gameplay, especially for like some of the end game fights. And now, like when I was in the first dungeon, and they're just like, "Hey, this is how Baton Pass works," and everyone just has this, and you can actually even level it up if you put the time in. I was like, "Oh wow, that's a huge game changer," and I think it really speeds up the gameplay in a lot of ways, especially. And then I think the other thing that was huge for me at least was like the ammo refilling. Like the original Persona 5, you had to hang out with the kid Shinya, and he would like through his gun upgrade abilities you could carry more ammo with you, like so you would go up, and that kind of made it the guns a little bit more useful. But I'm happy that again they just kind of, instead of putting that behind the social link and being really far in the social link, I'm happy they just pulled that out and put that as like a front facing mechanic. And I'm sure a lot of people probably didn't, or a lot of people from what I hear didn't use the guns in Persona 5, and I know a lot of people I don't even think probably realized Baton Pass was even a thing, let alone that you could really maximize it when using the Baton Pass between all the party members.
Yeah, that was definitely something that I did not remember from the first game. But when it kind of gets introduced here, and it's like, hey, yeah, if you every time you baton pass, the enemy or the your ability is going to be that much stronger. And if you manage to baton pass 3 times, so you get all 4 members kind of attacking in one turn, like that fourth member's baton or that fourth member's move is going to be cost nothing, SP or HP wise. So I was like, that's a really cool thing, and I found myself doing that like almost immediately. Being able to kind of capitalize on that ability. So that was really cool. And yeah, I agree that the giving that kind of right out the gate made getting through some of those early battles just a lot less grindy, and it was just kind of like, okay, yep, I'm killing these guys in like one turn, or 1 or 2 turns or something like that. Similarly with the exploding monsters that we kind of touched on earlier. So one of the things I want to touch on that like didn't really, like, I remember this was like a selling point kind of from preview events and stuff going into the game, was the grappling hook. And ultimately, like, I felt like the grappling hook didn't really do that much. Like, it gets introduced, and it's introduced as like a, hey, here's alternate routes through a lot of the palaces. And it's like, yeah, kind of alternate routes, but like really it's mostly here, hey, if you're using the grappling hook, it's probably because you're going off the beaten path to go find a will seed. Cool.
I think that's 100% true because I definitely don't think it's like this huge, this something they like did a lot with, but I do kind of like that it's there. I think it made some of the dungeons a little bit more dynamic than they were. But you're definitely right where like the only time you actually use it is when you're going off the beaten path to go find something. So if you ever see a grappling hook, you know where to go look to go find something. And it's
That's
kind of
not
like,
entirely accurate because you can use that to skip the entire middle part of Okamura's dungeon.
I mean, like, not you use it, but not. I mean, like, it did not bypass much of Okamura's dungeon.
It bypassed the part that added 15 hours to my original gameplay.
What part was that?
The middle part that I got lost in.
the vent thing.
I don't know what part you're talking about though. Like, because Okamura is basically like, you've got the section where you're trying to figure out the hierarchy of baddies by talking to them to get like the different keycard levels. Then like there's the section with the cranes, and then the section where you kind of go through the different vent things, the like air space vents, right?
Yep.
So
So
there, between the crane part and the hierarchy part, there's another part in there that you skip over using the grappling hook that in the original game I got lost in, and like took me a long time to like backtrack my way to the entrance to like do that with. Anyway.
And I don't know what part that is that you're talking about. Is that the where you have like the machines saying like lunchtime and stuff like that? Where you have to like reschedule the reprogram the thing to be like, hey, a break, and then it's like, okay, you've got 5 seconds for your break, and everyone's like, what the?
No, that's
And so you,
that's part of the that's
lumping
before
that in with the cranes.
that's that got lumped in with the cranes. There's an entire other section. If I might be misremembering this, I just like I was traumatized by Okamura's dungeon the first time I went through.
Yeah, I mean, like I remember in the crane section not understanding some of the points where I needed to go and do stuff. I didn't lose 13 hours to it, so like an Okamura's dungeon was certainly one of the ones, but I did not. When I was playing through it again, I did not notice any like sizable chunk of not being in that. I still felt it was as long as it would have been last time if I had known where I needed to go the last time around. I just felt like I kind of knew the path a little bit better this time. But yes, it's not a complete one-to-one that every dungeon is the same. There are some dungeons that did get a little bit of redesign because of the grappling hook, but for the most part, I felt like the grappling hook was just kind of like a gimmicky thing to find the secret hidden paths to get the will seeds and stuff. There wasn't enough of it that really leapt out at me as like, oh, this is a new way to get around the dungeon, because the dungeons were all kind of obviously very carefully designed first time around, and that didn't change too much for me this time around.
And I don't know if you guys knew either, but with the grappling hook, you can ambush enemies from farther away. Like you can basically you hook onto their mask and like pull yourself over.
Yeah, and I did that. I didn't do that much. I feel like I feel like when I was ambushing people, it was I also just because I had already played through the game twice, I wasn't eager here for a challenge, so I was playing through the game on like easy mode. I wasn't diving in for a challenge. I didn't go all the way down to safe, but I did kind of keep it on easy, so I was never really like struggling through the combat or the gameplay and anything like that. And I feel like I, for the most part, was just ambushing enemies just fine regularly. But yes, I did occasionally. You could and I don't remember if it was something you could do right out the gate or if it was something that you had to get like from leveled up from somebody.
I think it's part of Kasumi's confidant, because I think part of her like gymnastics training is that you can get better with the grappling hook.
Yeah,
that sounds right. So yeah, I did that, but it again wasn't like that element was not game changing for me. It was like a cool little other way of playing, and again, so many of my like complaints about Persona 5 Royal would not exist had I not played Persona 5 and put so much time into that. So if I had just come into this game, it would have been like, oh cool, this grappling hook thing is neat. But it didn't. It wasn't a big enough change for me to get me all excited kind of using it in this game.
The best moment with that is just literally in the first dungeon, because I feel like that's like, because the first dungeon, the beginning of the game is like basically the same until you get to the point where it's like, hey, look up, use the grappling hook, that's your way out. And I was like, oh, what? Like, this is wild. Or they talking about the casino, I guess. I mean, not literally the Kamoshida Palace.
Yeah, the prologue.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that moment coming up, and that's where like, oh, new elements are being added, and you see kind of a new silhouette that you obviously know is Kasumi or whatever, and being like, oh, okay, this is a different element to this game. Here's an element of how the game up until that new extra semester is going to change. You get new little bits of details like that. Cool, neat. But yeah, I also don't have like such an intimate knowledge of the first game to really have caught in the way that Cameron is describing like sizable or noticeable differences. But I did appreciate that a lot of those little things just kind of all coalesce to be a solid quality of life improvement on combat in general and the palaces. But I still very much like Okamura's and Shido's palaces in particular just still felt so dang long. And it's probably because they're designed to be done over multiple trips to the palace and done over multiple days. And I insisted on always doing them basically as quickly and as much as I could. So it was you know, it was a long batch without break in one go, that I should have personally broken up more. But if the game's going to let me try and do that, I'm going to try and do that. So I have the whole rest of the time. I'm not wasting extra days in the palace, because that's just not what I wanted to do. I wanted to go out and, hang out with friends and do the social link stuff.
I hope that's something they fix better, like, because I think that was a problem in 5, kind of, and I think they fixed it a little bit in Royale. Like, it's better, but it's not fixed, because I think it is still an underlying problem. Like, you're meant to go to the dungeons, like, multiple days, or that's how they intend it, but no one does. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think anyone on this podcast does, and no one I've ever talked to, everybody's goal is to do it in one day after school until they
Yeah.
tell you to leave, especially because we want to go, like you said, we want to hang out with the friends. We want to go do all the other stuff in the game. So I hope they learn a little bit from that, or kind of take that like to heart, and they figure out a better way to do the dungeon system while still giving you all the time to do social stuff.
Yeah, like I liked I like the dungeons that do basically say, okay, you've hit a wall here, so we're gonna have to stop the dungeon for this day, and you're gonna have to come back at a different time after you do this thing in the real world. Like Madarame's was obviously the place where we first did that in the original game, and so I like that idea to help pace out the dungeons. I just feel like they didn't do that enough throughout, and so yeah, I think that's something that they could do to kind of force better pacing on the dungeons compared to what we currently have.
And because weirdly enough, like that's not even in the long dungeons. Like they only, if anything, make you leave the shorter dungeons. Because like you said, like Shido's and Okumura's, which are the longest, like most annoying dungeons. It's like, yeah, no, there's no reason for you to leave. Like you can do all of this at one time, no problem.
Yeah. So diving on into one of the other elements, again, before we dive into kind of the new confidants completely, one of the changes that is in there is you have kind of new elements to confidant conversations. Notably, I think, as you kind of touched on, Frank, the kind of like extra little phone call you get after a scene with everybody. And I really enjoyed that, as I very much kind of went into this. You don't have to 100% this for the platinum, so that was also like cool. But I still wanted to try and maximize my time with the game and effectively 100% it and max out all my social ranks and stuff. So I was playing with a guide, but only really for the conversations, just to know like, okay, this conversation will get me 2 notes or 3 notes or whatever, and it'll get me 2 notes, but if I have that confidant's persona linked, equipped, I'll get 3 notes from it or something like that. I basically followed a guide to make sure I was maximizing those conversations, and so I really appreciated that I got like an extra little conversation beat with them afterwards when I would show back up at the cafe, and they would basically like call me right as I'm walking in the door and be like, "Hey, thanks for hanging out today. Let's crack one more joke about what we just discussed." And then you basically have like 3 options to choose from to get a little bit more kind of your persona, of your social rank, good to go for the next time around. I really enjoyed that, and so I very rarely did I have to like go out with somebody where I wasn't getting a new social link, like level up. So I really appreciated that element of this version. Again, like it's another quality of life thing that made trying to maximize all the characters, even the characters like I just didn't really care about or ever use, getting to kind of maximize their relationships sooner or earlier, as a result. I don't know if anybody has anything to add to that.
I also definitely love those phone calls, and the only thing I also would even extra highlight on top of that is I feel like the phone calls with Boss are extra like amazing, and I guess like
Yeah.
I feel like they really help build that relationship of like him kind of like not liking you or being like this guy's a punk, but like when you kind of play it with like the perfect answers and you're just really, I love being really nice and respectful to Boss, and he really gets that like opinion flip about Joker. And I don't know, like their relationship, I think, is something really, really amazing and special. And I think those phone calls are like the icing on the cake there.
I
Yeah,
agree.
I
I
agree
would
there.
I would say that the way that he mentions, he's like, because he ends his conversation with you in person being like, well, I guess you know what, never mind, and then walks away and then calls you later and says, hey, so I was trying to say this and I really appreciate you. Thanks for like, you know, looking after the shop, or thanks for helping out with Futaba. Like you get a bit more of a sincerity from him over those phone calls that he's too embarrassed to mention in person, which made it feel like it was much more like a real relationship with somebody. So
Yeah, especially because like one of the, and I didn't remember if this was in the base game as well, but like one of the first things he kind of says is like, he kind of has like a little borderline homophobic kind of thing of like, I don't ever put another guy's cell phone number in my phone. Like that's not a thing I do. And
I don't
so
know
the
if
fact
that's I don't know
like,
if that was homophobic so much as he was just trying to emphasize that he only like
I mean, yeah, like I read it as like, oh, he has a problem having another guy's phone number in his phone. And the way he kind of like said it, I was like, okay, that's a little like I feel like you don't need that that animosity to that moment, but that may just be me reading more into it than is there. But
I always read it
so
as
maybe
like
not,
it's like playing up his identity as like a womanizer that it turns
Okay.
out is actually like not his real identity. His real identity is this like doting father.
yeah,
Yeah, because that's what they kind of play with him is because he's always like, oh, you're always like, where are you running off to, boss? Or like, who are you talking to? Is that a girl? And it's actually Futaba like the entire time.
Yeah.
yeah,
Like that's the fun part about it. It's like he plays off like this like I'm this like sexy older coffee like cafe like French cafe coffee owner who like is like this ladies man and like totally plays up on that like his outfit when he takes you to school like everything about him like he's trying to like ooze ladies man and he's like
He
I
has
don't
an
ever
old
put
classic
guys
car.
yeah he tells you he goes I don't put guys numbers in my phone so be happy you're the exception to that it's more of like a I'm this much of a player like so like and because that's something that you might like that's an identity thing I don't know if it's just like anime and video games based in Japan or if it's like an actual thing there um but like the idea like they bring it up in Makoto's social link when she brings up like the red flags to look for a womanizer, and one of them is like he only has women's like cell phone numbers in his phone, and like so like that happens, and when that happens, I'm pretty sure Margata says something about boss in that moment. If not, it's like my mind went there. It's like these all describe these all describe Sojiro.
yeah.
So I saw it more of like playing into like his womanizing trope versus like a homophobic thing. Granted,
Okay.
they definitely cleaned up a lot of the homophobia for the standard game in this game.
Did they?
Yeah,
Because I
the
felt like it was still just kind of like there.
No, it was instead it felt more like they were trying to recruit instead of it being like playing off of the false stereo like the very damaging and terrible stereotype that gay guys want to attract straight guys and like turn them gay, like recruit them that way, which is how it comes off in the original game. In this game, they make it very clear that they're scouting Ryuji for for some sort of like show, like some sort of like cross-dressing show. Like they're very serious about looking at Ryuji as like a prospect as a talent versus like preying on a straight young man, which is a like horrifyingly like it is so damaging and so awful and like for it to be like well that's a weird thing to say it's like yeah but then when you encounter it as somebody who's not straight and you encounter that and because you hear like you can't trust them because you know they might like and it's like that's not how it works and it's really frustrating and damaging and for them to then change up the entire kind of context of their conversation in Royale to make it much more that these are like basically talent scouts and they scout Ryuji and they say you have like look at your bone structure they look at him and analyze him in Royale more so as like a modeling agent would versus the stereotype of like predatory like homosexual predatory sexual deviance. So I felt that was a very big difference, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, it's like I knew that they had changed those characters around. I had largely avoided them. I like you have like the one kind of like forced scene the first time you go to that whichever district that is with them, and then they're there and you can kind of like continue to talk with them and interact with them like when you visit or something. And I just never did because I was like, okay, these guys are are bad one-note stereotypical characters in the original game. And this time around, I saw that they had changed it, but I didn't remember enough about why they were bad. And I even kind of what you're describing, like I just kind of like that all glossed over. I didn't really pay too much attention to what they were talking about, and then I just never like revisited or continued kind of exploring their moments as like NPCs. So, but I'm glad that there were changes addressed to try and take away the gay scare element of that like that sequence in those characters.
Because I think another thing that's important one, it's important to note that like the LGBT culture in Japan is very radically different than in America, but like historically and even now today, how it's viewed and everything like that, societal wise. But I will also say that when they show up again at the beach, they make mention, instead of it in the original game, they were like, "Oh, I can't believe," like they once again the emphasis on they were trying to like attract Ryuji. Instead, they make mention of like, "Oh my, like look at him, isn't he like he is the perfect talent for what we were looking for." It's such a shame that he's not interested in like pursuing this performance opportunity. And so it felt much more like that, like once again reemphasizing the changes they made. And like I really appreciate that Atlas, or maybe it's just the translation team, decided to take it into their own hands, but that they made a conscientious decision to, because I think on more than one occasion we have seen companies like double down saying, well, no, we won't censor this, or we won't change this because this is the original interpretation. To see them take into consideration, especially like the response from Western fans, to say, hey, like this is like we have a problem with this.
And Atlas does like I mean I immediately think of Catherine and Catherine Full Body, which did not have the best track record with LGBT issues.
That's another.
They kind of doubled down on some of those elements in the remake, in the Full Body remake, like erasing a dead name or something like that. It's foggy in my memory, but I remember like people up in arms about that, and rightfully so. And so I appreciate that they tried to handle the Persona 5 Royal here localization with a little bit more sensitivity, and trying to honor and respect those issues and the criticisms from the original game.
Well, part of the problem with the original game is that for the sake of humor, they play up the the transphobic reveal. It turns out that character actually like is not like, because they're an alien, they don't have any genitals, and so there's nothing there, and that's what the person's reacting to. But the way that it's framed, it's like it's easy to, especially with the dead name issue and the other trans issues with the bartender, like that gets lumped into it, and that's a big visualization that people like to focus in on, especially when they're writing articles about it, versus like what the actual problems are, which is they're serious issues in Catherine Full Bodied, which is, you know, the issues of respecting our trans brothers and sisters' decisions to, you know, forego a new path in their life with a new name, and respecting it by using their name and not dead naming them, and treating the transition as a real serious decision, instead of something kind of like with whimsy like they do in that game. From what I understand, I've never played the Catherine games, but from what I understand, from what I read, that was a lot of like that was much more the massive issue. And to see, and then they doubled down on it, and everybody was like, what the fuck? Why would you do that? And then for them to come back and say, hey, this has been a much more serious consideration, especially after I think the Catherine Full Body thing, where they're like, we need to take this into much more serious consideration, and I really feel like they did. So
so let's dive into some changes on the Mementos side of things.
Jose.
The biggest like weird little thing that got added was Jose and the and all the little flowers that you can pick up as you're driving around Mementos. What do we think about him? Did either of you guys do the optional boss fight with him?
I did.
No, I didn't. I didn't realize there was one. Do you have to? Is it you have to collect all the will seeds to have that optional fight with him?
I don't think so. I think it's just after you make it in the third semester, after you get to the bottom of Mementos, before you start like yeah, no, it's at the bottom of Mementos, right, where you like detach the cables and stuff that are going into Maruki's palace. Um, After you do that, if you go back into Mementos, he'll be occasionally down there at like the bottom,
Oh, you can
and you
fight
can
him.
just yeah, you can talk to him, and he'll be like, hey, I want to, I've been studying you humans and all this stuff. I want to learn what it takes to be human, or what it is to be human, or something. And there's just an optional fight with him that you can take on. I was like, because I was playing on easy mode, and because I was like level 99 on all my characters at the time, like I trounced him pretty easily. But it definitely felt like it could have been one of those tougher fights. And so yeah, I don't even remember all that much about it. It was just like,
Does he
oh,
summon?
here's an
Does he summon any persona like Lati?
He
I don't even
he
remember,
has like
honestly.
the abilities, but he doesn't summon a persona. If he has
Okay.
like he has magic attacks, but I think it's the thing of like he's magic, not like he has the persona. Like he's not a persona user.
Okay, because he doesn't. Because I know the caretakers of the Velvet Room, the attendants that hold the compendium are able to summon personas from the compendium.
Right.
So I like because that's how you fight like Margaret and other attendant characters.
And even
Uh,
the twins.
the twins exactly.
Oh yeah, I didn't do any of those extra fights this time. Like I basically with the twins, I was like, I don't really care about whatever other stuff you guys are doing, so so I'm not even gonna bother.
I maxed out their confidant, but I didn't do their fight. I don't actually know if you can fight them
Same, yeah,
until New Game Plus, but their fight is a pain in the ass. Like I did it last time.
yeah.
Their
That's
fight is
I
that any different from the fight you have to do with when Wybelith reveals himself as Igor?
Oh, it is, yeah. Because like in the new game plus for Persona 5 at least, like I went you when you can go fight the twins, and they basically you're fighting both of them, and it's like you said they have the compendium, so they can summon any persona like the super high level ones with super high level attacks. But the thing that was mainly like a pain in the ass is because there's two of them, so they heal each other and like they constantly like keep each other alive and up, and you really need to output like a lot of damage. Like I died fighting them, and it took like 30 minutes, and I almost had them, and they literally wiped my entire team in like one awful turn.
Interesting.
Well, because
Because I
they
did
can
the
also use
yeah.
like any power, so they hit you with like the
Mm,
oh weakness. Now I get another attack, and then they just stacks until they wrecked my entire team in one turn.
rough. No, that reminds me of no, I really enjoyed it. Like this is part of the mementos, I guess, and the Velvet Room stuff is the additional battles with Yu Narukami and then the Persona 3 protagonist, which were cool.
So I saw that they were in there, but I didn't encounter that at all. Is that how did you do that? Was that optional stuff?
Yeah, if you go to you speak to uh, whichever twin is holding the compendium at the time, or afterwards when it's shoot, I can't remember her name when she's fused together, but
Lavenza.
Lavenza. Yeah, when you talk to Lavenza, you can ask to like additional stuff, and you can
Mm.
do the like additional challenges. And the two challenges that they offer is one, it's called like the Moonlight Challenge, where you face off against the memory of a Persona user who saved the world from like basically saved the world from the end of the world calamity, which is the Persona 3 protagonist. And then the Persona 4 protagonist is like a like television world one, where you have to face a Persona user who like solved the fog related mystery plaguing the world. Um, so really cool
Great.
stuff with
Yeah,
that.
very cool. Because I remember seeing Persona 3 protagonist and Persona 4 protagonist, like I remember seeing their names in the credits for the game, and as I was playing I was like, where did they I don't remember encountering them.
Oh
Not that I would have known the
yeah,
Persona 3 protagonist because I didn't play that game. But I was like, I was thinking they showed up in some kind of like extra scene or something. And so yeah, I didn't realize they were like
no,
there as optional battles.
because the Persona 3 protagonist is currently like fused into like basically the thing that's stopping the world from ending. Like his fate is like super tragic and sad. And the Persona 4 protagonist is doing whatever he's doing in 2015 or like 2017 or whatever year this game takes place in, but like years later, so he's like not like he's maybe a university student at this point, but so the characters actually show up as memories. And what's really cool is the theme song from each game plays during their like the fight song plays from their games.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get like for me like I mean we all love the Persona 4 battle theme. Like
It's
it's great.
fantastic. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like I remember I didn't play around with it too much in Persona 5 Royal, but I remember in the first game I had got like a lot of the DLC costumes and stuff, and so wearing the what is it, Eugen? No, whatever whatever the school. Yeah, wearing the costume from like the first game basically gave you like the Persona 4 battle theme instead of the Persona 5 battle theme. This time around, I picked up the DLC, and because I was in Persona 4 Golden, I always loved running around as the Featherman, because I was living out my Mighty Morphin Power Rangers fantasies from growing up, and so they were DLC costumes in the PS5 in Royal basically. So I picked those guys up and had like the characters wearing those outfits for a time. But yeah, that like I loved that the outfits could occasionally change the theme music that you would get in the fights.
I can't do the Featherman stuff after playing Persona 2. Like that takes on like a really like way like different connotation when you see those masks. And it's like
Persona 2 is so sad. So sad.
Oh yeah. Persona 2, like the first Persona games are like 1 and 2 are like it's some dark shit.
3 is dark too. Like it doesn't really get light until 4.
Three puts a very colorful palette onto the games though. Onto the game.
That's fair.
And like Persona 4 even in Persona like in the as far as Persona games go is much more lighthearted, but Persona 4 is not a lighthearted story.
Oh yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, there's always lots of murder going around. Lots of like kid and adult murder on the books there. So
yeah,
it was great.
The Persona series is not, actually I'd probably say when it comes to like deaths, Persona 5 is probably the most lighthearted Persona game.
Yeah, but then they trick you with Persona dancing all night and stuff like that, making you think, hey, everything's happy and poppy and whatnot. So yeah, what did you guys think about like the flowers and all the extra like little stars that you could pick up as you kind of changed, and how you could kind of like the stamps. Sorry. The extra, you could basically like buy, okay, give me an extra 10% experience or an extra 10% coins or items or stuff like that.
It's perfect. Like the way they built it out. Stamps are harder to get, so they're much more valuable, but you're still able to like reset them with a smaller amount of, like not an insignificant amount, but a small amount of flowers allows you to reset the stamp points. So you can rebalance and reallocate as you need, whether it's I need to grind for experience, I need to grind for money, I want to grind for items, and they really let you like customize that out. And it's really cool is when you get like 200% money and 200% experience, and you're just like, and you unlock Ryuji's like kill lesser personas or kill lesser enemies automatically, not even having to battle them.
Mm-hmm.
And just like strolling through mementos, just power leveling. Like I got my last like, because I maxed out my levels, of course, but I got my last like 25 levels, like just cruising through mementos and just taking it all in, and just like getting ungodly amounts of money and experience from that. So I mean that's always awesome.
Yeah, I never respect the mementos upgrades myself. I never like reallocated the stamps. I just kind of was like, okay, I need to go get more stamps to if I want to get like the next level of money or the next level of experience or something like that. But I definitely, I definitely got to the point where I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna race through enemies and not have to worry about, actually doing a lot of these fights and power leveling and all that kind of stuff. So I appreciate that. One of the things that I think like trophy hunters especially lamented was the fact that they removed the exploit from the first game where flu season. Yeah, during flu season you could that's when a lot of us would get the trophy for defeating the Reaper, because the Reaper would get despair. You basically just had to survive 3 turns and then it would die. They removed that exploit, so the Reaper was a lot harder this time around. I remember encountering him like when I was like level 30 or something, and he killed me in one turn. I was like, well, shit. There goes, however many hours I had been in Mementos at that time, because game obviously still does not have autosave or anything like that. So I was like, oops, well, I now know to avoid the chains next time around. But I ultimately did defeat them and got that platinum. We all got the platinum, right?
Yeah, I got the platinum.
Nice.
This is it's super cool. It was great.
Yeah.
I was ready to do a lot more work to get the platinum this time around. Didn't have to do that much work for it, and it was great.
Yeah, because I have the platinum in the last one, and you had to do New Game Plus, you had to fill the compendium, you had to max out all the social links, like all the stuff that like they cut out. And on one hand, I'm like, oh, it sucks you don't get a trophy for doing that stuff now. But on the other hand, I'm like, hell yeah, I'll take the one run platinum.
Yeah, I very much appreciated that they kind of made a lot of the trophies like, hey, here are new things we added this time around, so go try the new things we added and you'll get the trophy.
Like Cling LeBlanc.
Yeah.
Like that was a super easy one to get.
Yeah.
It's like, man, isn't it great that you like helped clean up the place that you live in? And it's like, huh, thanks, I guess. That's great. Yeah.
It's like Sojiro will probably appreciate this, even though he'll never mention it.
Yeah. But yeah, and so like there were even some that I was like, okay, I don't really want to waste like the in-game time doing that, so I'm gonna just go ahead and like make a save here, and I'm just gonna burn through 4 days doing like the maid cafe or something like that to get whatever thing I needed to do there, because you needed like to have gone to that thing and get a certain number of points to get whatever trophy that was. So there were a couple things I did like that where I was like, okay, I'm gonna play through to get the trophy, and then I'm gonna like reload an old save to just go back and actually use those days how I want to use them. It was the same, I think, with like going to the shrine in the new place and like meditating once. I was like, I don't really care about that, so I'm gonna do it and then reload a save and get some of that other stuff. So yeah. Cool on the changes in Mementos. Obviously, one of the big things that I think a lot of us loved is that Morgana did not tell us we should go to bed.
Oh my gosh!
When we got home from Mementos, or when we got home from the palaces, so that was a huge like quality of life thing. Even when they like keep you confined into LeBlanc, unless you kind of get the Kawakami upgrade later on, where you can kind of go out and she'll give you like the massage. But even like being confined to LeBlanc, they gave you enough things to do in LeBlanc to level up, stats or something like that, that made that significantly worthwhile, I thought. So that was a huge like improvement for me, that I was like, yay, I can like, here's where I'm gonna play all the video games or watch all the DVDs or stuff. And even I didn't like, I don't think I utilized it to its full capacity, but I appreciated that they changed like the DVD thing from like a, hey, come buy DVDs, to like a more of like a rental thing, and like, hey, come check it out kind of thing. I was like, okay, cool. I don't need to like. It was annoying when I had forgotten to go and like return a DVD, and I was like, okay, well, I can't watch any of the DVDs I have tonight. But still, it was like, I appreciate that they were like, hey, we're doing like the Netflix, DVD model where you check one in, you check one out kind of thing. Neat. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything else to add on that. But yes,
you get to decorate your room. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was in the first one too.
I never.
Yeah.
Dude, this is a huge part of the game for me. Like, we won't get deep into it, but getting all the decorations from your confidants and decorating your room, especially getting the giant fucking it's a chocolate fountain you get from On, and it's the size of Joker, and it's literally the size of the tree it stands next to. I think they used the same model and they just kind of like altered it. And I was like,
nice.
I don't know, man. Like that's a huge thing for me, especially because like you get the Risei poster, you get all these other little knickknacks from hanging out with people, and it encouraged me to keep hanging out with people and having these cool social scenes besides just like building the confidant, which is something I like.
Yeah. That's fair. I only got like the chocolate fountain and the Risei poster, but I went in and made sure I was getting all of the
plushes.
Crane Game.
Oh hell yeah,
plushes. Yeah,
I love those.
Anytime
too.
They would come up.
Yep. I will say though that I love Ryusuke's quite a bit, because it's just a statue that you put in your room.
Just Yusuke, right?
Yeah, just Yusuke.
Okay. It sounded like you.
I said
Ryuji.
I said Ryusuke. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
That's a different thing.
You are shipping Ryuji and Yusuke. Cool, got it.
No, I ship Ryuji and On.
Of course. I mean, that's what the internet does.
Yep.
I mean, it's actually On's most of the time is paired up with Joker, predominantly. But like, there's way too much. Like, they have a deeper history, and there's just a lot of like things between them. Like, when it's the one of the first anime cutscenes, and it shows Ryuji just kind of like looking over at On, and it's not like
he's
forlorn, but like there's definitely like he's very considerate of his relationship with her. And,
sure, but he's also a horn dog with her.
And well, he's also an idiot. He's just he's a jock idiot. And like I love my stupid 8-boy, but he is 100% stupid.
Yeah. I enjoyed very much in the original game, and I enjoyed kind of like revisiting the scenes here where I think during On's social links, like she wants to like get stronger and stuff, and so like she invites Ryuji to kind of join her and Joker in the gym kind of thing. You get fun little dynamics with the three of them together in some of those scenes. Always made for fun times with the team. So let's talk about the new location that we get. Kichijoji, is that right?
Kichijoji.
I don't know. Yeah. Where you can go play is where mainly you can hang out with Akechi and Kasumi, but you can go play darts there. You can go play billiards. You can go to the jazz club. It's got some new shops that you can kind of hang out at, which I appreciated because I felt like I was getting so many more suity clothes this time around.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That I was like, I'm definitely not going to do this much laundry, even with Kawakami helping. So I appreciate that there was like a secondhand clothing shop there where you could just be like, hey, sell all your secondhand clothes and we'll give you like points towards, buying actual stuff or something. I was like, cool.
The sprays,
I'm definitely going to do that.
The ultimate spray they sell there is super useful against enemies that use Heat Riser. Because Heat Riser, of course, for those of you who don't recall or just didn't pay attention or just don't know because you're listening to this raw, which I don't understand why you do that, but here we go. And by raw, I mean you've never played the game. Heat Riser is the skill that increases attack, accuracy, and defense all at once. Oh, and evasion all at once. And so if you use the ultimate spray on enemies that use Heat Riser, like Shido, it takes it away immediately. So then you can use things like Debilitate and other stuff. So instead of just like negating it so it's even, you can actually decrease his stats, which makes his boss fight super easy.
Nice. Yeah, what do we think of kind of the extra little minigame things or extra things to do in that town, that little district of town?
So it's interesting because when it comes to Akechi's, they did an original video animation for Persona 5, the animation, the anime they did between Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royale, where they focus on Akechi and his relationship with the protagonist a little bit more. It's considered it's really an interesting thing where it's after Akechi's dead. The protagonist is kind of like going around and you get to see scenes where like they spent time together. And like that's a really cool thing and it makes you really feel for Akechi. And then they bring that into this and they make it like an area based around it. So you also get like all the other shopping stuff that's there. But the jazz club and the billiard dart lounge is specifically from like this like side story cut material for Akechi that I love that they re-brought back in. I love the like shopping area where you can just go around and buy food from all the different little places, like the bun shop, the soup shop, all the little places around there. Just like it felt like, oh, cool, this is so cool because you don't get that really with Central Street in Shibuya. And then other places that have shops like that you would expect like that are like their own designated locations for date spots and stuff like that. And so to give you like a more like casual like run around experience, it felt really, really cool. Like they even have like an incense shop there. And I love the new area. It's great.
Yeah, did you guys ever use the incense? Or did you like actively use the incense? I think there was like a trophy for it or something.
I did
like
it for
that,
the trophy.
Yeah.
That's and also I did it once to like level up a persona a specific way that I wanted to.
I used it once for the trophy, and then I wasn't paying attention when they called me to tell me to come get my fucking persona, and it ran away. Like they
I did not know they did that. Neat.
Well, so yeah, so if you leave them there too long, they'll run away. And basically, Caroline and Justine will tell you, "We'll call you one time." They're like, "We will not keep like hounding you to come get the persona." And it was right around the time I unlocked the thing where I had to go hang out with them. So she called me to say, "Hey, why don't you come hang out with us?" Which I knew I wasn't going to do. So the next time they called, I skipped through the conversation, and apparently they were calling to tell me to come get my persona.
Nice. Yeah,
So
I
does it run away, or does it just return to the sea of consciousness?
As far as I know, it's just gone because like I could have bought another one from the compendium of that persona because it was the Matador, but it wasn't. I don't think it was my build of the Matador because I had a great build for that, and it basically was just gone. It was the best persona I had at that moment.
whoops. Yeah, I that was another one. Like I didn't bother exploring a lot of the Carolyn and Justine stuff. Like they were like, "Hey, come hang out with us," and we went to like the Big Bang Burger, and I was like, "Okay, I don't know what this is adding to the game." And so I think I pinged you at that point, Frank. I was like, "Hey, am I going to get anything out of doing anything with them?" And you were like, "No, not really." And I was like, "Okay, I'm not going to bother then."
Oh, it's fun though, because you get to explore their different personalities a lot more.
Yeah, okay.
They're fun scenes and I'm glad they're there, but I just can't believe from like a gameplay standpoint, I can't believe they literally do nothing. They don't boost any stats, they don't boost like anything to do with their social link, they don't give you an item or like anything even for your room. Like it's wild to me that they just did that and it does nothing.
That's a good point,
Yeah,
actually. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I just liked it
yeah,
because, like, honestly, my first time playing through, um, like, I didn't really care about them as attendants very much, which is like in stark parallel to like your confidant with Margaret in Persona 4 and Persona
yeah,
4 Golden. Like your relationship with Margaret is like actually like an emotional connection where like she takes a genuine interest in you, and then to come into the abrasive nature of Caroline and Justine is rougher, but then like to not have any moments where you get to flesh it out, you just unlock their like compendium personas that they ask you to, etc., etc., and then they're like, "Oh, this is weird, like this mystery, da da da," but there's no personality to it. And so I felt like this was a great way of like expounding upon personality. But it is weird, Frank. You are correct in I agree with you in the like look at it like it really doesn't give you anything game wise, and that's super weird.
And that's my point because like I'm happy they put those scenes in, and I did the Big Bang Burger one, and it's a good scene. Like and from what people say who've done all of them, like those are some of the best scenes, in the game, or especially of what they added. But like it's just like you're, and I don't even want to be like mean about it or anything, but you're almost just wasting time by going to do that. Like this whole game is based on like you have limited time and you're trying to do all these social links and all these grinding and all these other things, and that gives you just nothing other than just like a fun scene. I guess maybe they wanted it for like New Game Plus people.
yeah, maybe. But yeah, I just could. I was like, I'm gonna go do anything else that will actually like power up
Well,
my characters and all that stuff.
if you think about it, I ended up doing a lot of those scenes after I'd like maxed out like my personal stats and didn't have any like confidants that were going to level up. So I guess that's if you're going through like you mentioned, Frank, if you're going through New Game Plus and you have maxed out personal stats, like that's a lot of free time,
Hmm,
like a lot of free time
that's
if you
very
think
true.
about it.
I mean, even there, like I found myself way more interested in playing darts again or something like that.
I love darts.
Well, the darts game is
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So I found this out well after I finished the game, and I think we've talked about it in like offline on one of the shows or something like that. But were you guys aware that you did not have to? Well, I know Cameron was because he made fun of me, but that you did not have to actually like do the motion controls to throw the darts.
I learned, and I was pretty much at the end of the game. Like I was more than like halfway through, and if anything, I had already maxed out most of the dart stuff. But yeah, I did eventually figure out you can just press X, and it'll like automatically throw the dart. Although, like I kind of said before, though, like I like the little motion control thing. I like the little like push it forward like you're throwing a dart. Like it's just a dumb little thing, but I thought it was fun.
Yeah, yeah, I enjoyed it, and yeah, oh yeah, I guess this as I'm like hearing this conversation, I'm like, oh wait, no, we definitely did talk about this on one of the probably this show a couple weeks ago or something like that, because I'm remembering editing the episode and hearing this conversation, so yeah, it was like okay, that's cool. It would have been nice if they'd explained it or I'd seen that I didn't have to throw it, but I also enjoyed throwing it, and I enjoyed kind of like figuring out the tricks to like maximize the dart throwing stuff. In particular, I think I talked about this previously, but the idea of if you're playing to 301 or something like that, and I would make sure that I was setting up my partner to only need to get like 1 point going into like their second turn, because if they won the game, you improved their baton pass by 2 levels instead of just 1. So like you could basically max out their baton pass in a single play with them instead of having to come back and play a second time. So that was, again, just like there's so much of this game was like min-maxing everything, to the point that like I remember as I was like nearing the end of the base game, because I didn't know how much new free time I was going to get in the extra semester. I was like, I don't know if I'm pushing to get like the last 2 confidence I need maxed out, and I want to say it was like Haru and Yusuke, because those are just the 2 characters I care least about in the whole story, so they're always the ones I basically just save for last. And I think I finally maxed out Yusuke's confidant stuff at like on like the last free day before finishing before going into Mementos and doing that whole palace, and then I think in all the free time that I ended up getting in the kind of the new stuff, that was where I was like, okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and like max out all of my darts playing baton pass stuff with all my characters. So getting to do all that, I started having a lot of fun with darts, and I think I had like a perfect run where I basically had like 60 60 60 60 60 60. Like I did at one point. I got like I played I want to say it's like a game to 701 points or something like that, which you have to pretty much try and do flawlessly, especially if your partner fucks up. So
if you play
it was
with
a lot of fun.
if you play with Akechi, he only plays to 701. He doesn't play
Yeah.
any lesser like amount.
That's right.
That's so real to his character.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that.
Sorry, I did it with On, and On was the only person who was able to also get like the perfect score with me, and I was like, man, power couple over here, like just the perfect, and then it goes to her, and it's like perfect.
Nice. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I think we talked about this previously, but I was like, I didn't really know the outside of like the upgrades that you get from billiards. To what does billiards upgrade?
The baton pass, I think. And
No, billiards upgrades just your relationships with people.
Oh, it also upgrades
Your proficiency.
There you go. Yeah, maybe
it upgrades.
It's one of the best ways to upgrade your proficiency in the game.
It upgrades another thing for like when you're in the dungeons, but I don't remember what it is. Oh, it upgrades the all-out attack damage, I think.
That sounds right. Yeah. Or like the Showtime attacks, maybe.
Yeah, it upgrades like one of those kind of attacks. It upgrades all of that.
Yeah, I remember like I did billiards, and I read like the books on billiards and stuff and whatnot, but I was like, I feel like this isn't really doing too much for me, especially because there wasn't like a mini game component to it. Where I was just like, okay, well, I'll do billiards like the 2 or 3 times that I, needed to with characters, but I felt like it wasn't really adding enough to what else I was trying to do, like to get the trick shots or any of that kind of stuff.
I mean, that's fair. I did it only until I could just like trounce Akechi and like make him feel bad about himself.
That's fair. Yeah. So it upgraded the technical ranks for everybody. That's what billiards did.
Yeah. So if they like they're attacking somebody who's down because of a weak attack, their technical attack goes up. That makes sense.
Yeah. Which I guess like that was another new thing in this version that I felt like I didn't really ever get a grasp on, like what triggered a technical attack. Versus like a weak attack or something like that, but it was just like one more way. I was like, okay, cool. I got it's like the UI is telling me if I attack this person, it's going to be a technical attack. Cool, I know that's going to do extra damage, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. But I'd never really paid too much attention to like what was causing it or what was allowing it or any of that stuff, because I'm not the kind of person that like did a lot with status effects in these games. It just isn't my play style. I'm much more of like a just figure out what they're weak against and use that ability or use that element, and then just like power my way through everything else. But I guess that's probably what it was. It was like, oh, if you inflict them with like dizzy or something, and then you use a psi attack, then it does a technical damage or something like that.
That's exactly it, because it's pretty much how you like combine the things together. Because like one of the most common ones I used is like if you light them on fire and then use a wind attack, it's a technical, like it does more damage because you're kind of comboing like moves together. And then the other one I can always think of off the top of my head is like if they're asleep and then you use the psi attacks, it does way more damage.
Yeah.
If you freeze somebody and then you use nuclear attack, like an element attack, I use that in combo with Makoto and Yusuke quite a bit.
Yeah.
Because you can get his like additional upgrades that lets him freeze enemies easier, and freezing enemies is like super easy.
Yeah. Let's dive into the real crux of, I think, the new stuff. So we got a few new confidants that you get basically a new series of scenes with Akechi. You got a whole new character in Dr. Maruki, the kind of guidance counselor that comes to the school early on, and then you have the new gymnast character Kasumi, who gets introduced and then has a much darker kind of like reveal in the end game.
Was not anticipating that. That's for sure.
Yeah, that was I
had an idea that
since,
was a lot
since
less,
we're in like full spoiler territory. The reveal that Kasumi was really Sumire was like, oh, okay, they sixth sensed me there. Neat. I
actually thought it was more of a sixth sense. So when she's talking about like my phone's broken and all this stuff, and she keeps talking about stuff like that, my thought was, I think there was an accident. Her parents and her sister are dead, and she's like psychosis her way into thinking that they're still alive. So mine was actually probably not darker.
You were even darker with it.
Yeah, darker, but not as twisted as, because it's twisted that she was so guilt-ridden that she became her sibling. Yeah. And not even her actual sibling, as you reveal, like when you go through her confidant link. She finds out the kind of Kasumi that she thought existed wasn't real. Kasumi was actually like a much different kind of a person than she and it's kind of like the pedestal effect. She put her sister up on this pedestal, and her sister, because of that, she never saw her sister for who she really was, which was just a like kind yet very competitive person. And it just speaks to kind of like, you don't really, until you can properly reflect on people and like look at people honestly and earnestly, you don't look at them when they're up on pedestals, or you don't look down on them. When you actually just like look at them as a person, they tend to be a lot different and a lot more human than you think. And her entire arc is super great. I love Sumire as a character, like when she is actually herself, and it's like, and she does a very human thing, which is she willingly decides to give in to being Kasumi because she thinks that's better for everybody. And like, fuck, like that's a hard truth that a lot of us would probably make that same decision in her situation. Like, that's tough.
Yeah, I had a different reading of it a little bit, in that I felt like her decision to become Kasumi was much more like, she said it not fully meaning it, but Maruki was like testing out his powers or whatever, and basically made it happen, and so kind of like changed her psychosis, changed her cognition in that regard, and so that's where she kind of progressed.
But his power doesn't work unless somebody earnestly wants it to be that way. Which is why it didn't work against. Yeah. It's why that didn't have an effect with Akechi or the protagonist or Joker. But also, if you listen to some of the background conversations and loading screens, there are some people who aren't fully under his persona's power because they don't earnestly want for this reality.
Yeah.
And so like but so Kasumi's saying that, it's like, well, did she really mean it? It's like, if she didn't mean it, then it wouldn't have affected her so greatly. I don't think.
Yeah, I guess, but also it's like it's exploiting like
100%.
a very broken person in a very like dark moment in their life. Like somebody might say that in the moment, but not actually in the long run want to completely abandon who they actually are.
And it's
So
important to note that Maruki did take advantage of a situation where the correct response would have been helping her build herself up as an individual rather than helping her escape in his demented, twisted sort of counseling, which is
yeah.
like fucking fantastic as far as his character goes. Like,
Yeah, I mean that was one of the cool things was like, because so to trigger the true ending of this now, you basically had to get Akechi maxed out and Maruki maxed out, and Kasumi maxed out to her like 5-star rank, all by like November something, I want to say.
like second week of November.
Basically, yeah, before you like go headlong into Shido's palace and the Mementos stuff, I think. And so they kind of like take a back seat a little bit to go finish the like natural ending of the game. And then they all come back in for the final semester. And I loved how that got introduced and implemented, because it felt like a natural evolution of like, well, we just defeated God. What are we going to do next? Oh, we're going to go into like an alternate timeline where everybody got like the happy endings that they wanted because Maruki is doing this weird thing with cognition. He can kind of make all of everybody's dreams come true.
Which is weird because I felt like it was a direct response to a lot of us who were like, we beat God and then we go to prison, which sucks. Like we miss out on like this entire part of the game because we did the right thing and that sucks. And so this is a direct response to the player's wishes to have additional time with these characters. Like it's such a great like the meta conversation of like the ending of Persona 5 kind of being a downer in its own way, being then like showing like, is this the happy ending that you wanted? You wanted the cake and the pie and the ice cream with the cherries and like hot chocolate drizzle on top with like, this is what you wanted, isn't it? And it's like, oh yeah. Like that's so it's so good. And Akechi just being like this is he doesn't care.
Yeah, and I love that reveal of like you're going into that scene and Sae is basically saying like, hey, we're gonna have to send you to prison, and then like Akechi comes in and is like, hey, I told them everything about Shido, and it's like, wait, you're alive, and you're taking the fall for this so that Joker can go and kind of have those days back. That's like the one reveal and moment that you wouldn't get if you didn't play the original game, that like, oh, this is how something has changed.
That's the moment that it happens, that you realize this, and then you have like a regular Christmas date with whoever you chose to, and which is totally opposite from like your experience playing the regular game with like the regular ending, because you have this very melancholy, like quiet moment with your chosen partner, your paramour, in the dark of LeBlanc's attic, where like it's not a happy moment. It's like it's very, because Joker's not telling them that he's going to prison tomorrow. Yeah. On Christmas Day, he's going to prison to secure Shido's conviction, because if he doesn't come forward, Shido's minions are going to do everything they can to obscure and hide all the problems that are there with it, and hide Shido so that their crimes don't come out. And so Sai's working against the system this way, so you have to help her by basically being like the one point of evidence that nobody can refute. Yeah. And then Akechi coming back, and it's like it plays off of like, and I love how Maruki calls it out. He goes, "This is like Akechi being here is what you wanted." It was I brought Akechi back not as a distraction, but because it's what you wanted. Mm-hmm. Joker, like you wanted to settle your relationship with him. You're the very, especially with the way that Akechi's confidant plays out now. Yeah. It's complicated. It's like the complexity of Akechi as a character is not revealed in the original game until like the very end, in Shido's palace, and it's like there's a deep unraveling that occurs very quickly, and felt like a great way of saying, oh well, fuck Akechi then, where your persona, or your not persona, but your confidant with Akechi in Royal, as it evolves and changes, there is like an actual like you see who Akechi really is much earlier on, that he is like this person who doesn't like losing. He's petty and he's childish and he is like and like his and Joker's relationship deepens and like is much more, the depth of their relationship is much more fleshed out because of that. Um, and I feel like it's a great expansion on Akechi's character because there's these poignant moments where if you have a Max, like you have a further along um, confidant link with him, like he laments constantly, like why couldn't we have met a couple years ago? Like why did we have to meet now? Like why is it this happening now? When and for Akechi's perspective, why am I bonding with this person that I'm setting up to take the fall for everything right before I'm about to accomplish my goal? Like why have I developed the one friendship that I've ever had in my entire life with this person right before I'm about to screw him over?
And you even
And
say like hit like one friendship, but it's almost like this is the only person probably ever in existence he's actually ever cared about besides himself.
his mother and like he's been driven his entire life based off of this concept of revenge against Shido, and he decided he's going to give Shido he wants to bring Shido down when Shido's at his highest point of existence. He wants to tear him down. He wants to ruin Shido's life when Shido's at that pinnacle of Shido's personal goals in existence. And it's a twisted, like fucked up form of revenge, but man, is it good! Like that's such a great like look at his character and to kind of talk to him, and he kind of like reveals more to Joker, and he says, yeah, my, and he goes, you ask like, what about your parents? He goes, and he says like my dad's like a monster, deadbeat, awful, terrible person, and like my mother could never stop loving him, and it drove her to the point where she committed suicide. And like you get the depth of the pain and hurt that he's gone through in his life much more clearly, and you understand how did this character go from somebody who, and it's great because they do kind of like dig into it a little bit here. They dig into it a little bit in the Persona 5 animation episode where, why does his like guy, like his persona, Robin Hood persona, look like this like Superman, superhero, like Featherman looking character? And then you find out like in his through this persona like unlocks, or the confident unlocking, that he believes in justice. He believes in his justice, and he believes in like a very childish view of making right what's wrong. And it goes into even the guns that he uses are like toy laser guns from these Super Sentai shows, the Featherman shows. And his character is it's so good. And then at the very end, when Maruki says, if this reality goes away, Akechi will be dead. And Akechi talks to you and says, like, don't you fucking dare make the decision to keep this reality, this lie, this despicable reality. He goes, like, he goes, I don't want to live in a world like this under the heel of some false god. Like, Akechi just like being, even though this is a cognition of Akechi, because you have that full deep relationship with Akechi before his passing, your cognition of Akechi is true to who he is, and is 100% like accurate to how Akechi would have felt in that moment. Like, it doesn't matter if I disappear. You are like, this isn't real, and you know it, and you can't lie to yourself about it.
One of my favorite like just aspects of getting to play with Akechi in the third semester is that like the whole pretense of him being a good guy is completely thrown out the window. So he's just like a maniacal, crazy piece of shit person, and like he's not hiding that anymore to the rest of your team, because the rest of your team already knows who he is and what he was after the kind of end of Shido's palace. And so he's like, at least I can finally be like pure me. I can be the full, unfettered version of myself.
Which is great.
And yeah, I'm just going to be a monster.
Which is great because like in some way that's somehow like a redeeming thing about his character at the end, where it's like, cool, he's being honest about who he is now, and he kind of sucks as a person. And the thing is, he knows it, because when he's talking with Kasumi / Sumire through her palace, when you're teaming up with the two of them to like get to the bottom of this weird, awkward, tilted reality, like she goes, Akechi, like your outfit is like wild, and like, and you're kind of like not what I expected. And Akechi's just like, yeah, like that would be your perspective on it for sure. Like, oh, I guess we should like, and says, Sumire says like, we gotta save him or we gotta help him, and he goes, yeah, I guess we can't just kill him, can we? It's like, oh my gosh, yes, Akechi. Like,
Yeah.
this is 100% like eighth. When you unlock the eighth confidant level for Akechi, you fight him in the Mementos, one on one without anybody else there, and that's really like that's who I see as not the maniacal like man in black mastermind, but also not this fake hero version of Akechi. This really true to who Akechi is as a person, and then that's reflected in the last semester as well. Like that personality persists through, where it's not like where he's your ally, even though he's kind of a maniacal asshole, not your enemy, which is
Yeah.
great. Because it's just, I love it. I love Akechi. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, Akechi's confidant unlocking and like your last semester with him is by far my favorite addition to this game.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Kasumi's kind of story and just how broken she is, and the interesting way that they revealed that. Like I was totally bought in on her just kind of idol worship over her her older twin sister kind of thing.
I thought you were going to
'Cause
talk about
there
her
were,
idolship of Senpai.
no, I mean there is that too. Like I remember like as I was playing, knowing that like Alex loved Kasumi and that Kasumi has kind of like I think supplanted Rise for him as like his favorite
No, you can't say
character.
that. That's unverified. We know that she supplanted Futaba as his Persona 5, but Rise, you really think
Oh,
Rise like
I
got topped?
I thought I'd seen him say that.
It's possible he
I've
might
not
have.
listened to their spoiler cast that they'd done on it, but I thought I remembered seeing that
If that's
to
true,
say that like
that's
she is now
huge.
his favorite character. But like she was absolutely with like the senpai stuff. I was like, oh, I like immediately I was like, I get this why Alex loves this character. She is giving off such Rise vibes in kind of like all of her kind of interactions with Joker in the build up to their dynamic and their relationship. And yeah, I very much loved the turn that opens up once the reveal happens that like Kasume is actually Sumire, and you gotta kind of reconnect with who this person is and try and help them come to terms with who they are, because Maruke absolutely failed in his responsibilities in that regard and tried to give her an easier way out instead of like dealing with and overcoming her issues and her pain and her tragedy. He just tried to like wipe it all away, and the like psychosis break that had to have happened. I wish we saw a little bit more of like the moments where like she's talking to somebody and like she maybe called herself Kasumi or something, and her dad or somebody would have been like, "What are you talking about, honey?" Because we only really get that seemingly through like her gym teacher. It feels like where we get that she's saying like, "You need to remember who you are, not trying to be Kasumi." But I loved just kind of that twist with her and revealing like who she really is, and how that kind of changes the dynamic. I mean, all three really of the added confidant stories I think tie really nicely together, but hers was the standout one for me, certainly. Frank, how about you?
Yeah,
Where did you fall on kind of the new confidant stuff?
I really enjoyed all of it. I definitely really liked the I did like the stuff with Akechi, especially because it definitely did. I felt like it was handled so much more better, or so much better in Royale compared to the base game, and kind of building up like who he is. And I guess I mean, have like feeling some things towards him, but like it's like I feel like he is a much better and stronger character in this version. And I also, from what like even what you're saying, I really liked Kasumi's story and everything, or I guess it's Sumire technically, and kind of everything she kind of went through, and just this time you get to spend with her and kind of go through some of the things that she had to deal with, and try to like even help her with that. and she was the one I romanced this time around. And I feel like I don't know if maybe it is just like what Cam was saying, where she kind of idolizes Joker, but I feel like they had a good relationship together, and like
Oh,
I
I was just referencing like her senpai, like because that's how she refers to you. Everybody goes he, him, them, etc. Like with their like the pronouns supplanting Joker's name, but she just always says senpai.
Yeah.
And I mean, she's all about it from day one. And I also, I guess, to go into more of the thing we haven't even dived as much into is like I really like Dr. Maruki's story too. Like he has a really tragic, just kind of backstory, and it kind of I feel like it does a really good job of explaining like why he's doing the things he wants to do. And it's one of those things where he's not like he's the bad guy, but he's not like a bad guy. Like he just wants everyone to be like happy in this like idyllic version of the world, but like it really just doesn't.
He's not God trying to wipe out humanity.
Yeah, exactly. And like, and it's funny how he even uses like that to like his benefit, where like, oh, this guy's like gone, and now he kind of just slips in and takes control over like the entire world, and is just like, I'm gonna try to make this like happy, idyllic reality. But I think it
Well,
is kind of
he does it by using the Phantom Thieves. Like he builds the reality around what the Phantom Thieves' ideal world would be, and by doing that, he's able to supplant the fact that they supplanted God. The way they explained it is like I'm like, oh, that's so tricky. He doesn't just like, oh, this place is empty. It's like, oh, the people who now have control are giving it up, so I'm just gonna go ahead and take that. Thank you very much. I already know all your secret desires because I've counseled you, which is like nefarious. Like it is downright nefarious and fucked up what he does.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a very clever way of kind of like thinking back on those scenes that he had with each of the characters, because they existed like outside of the confidant kind of building. It was just like, oh, you would get to see Maruke talking with An about not wanting to about wanting her friend to have lived a happy healthy life, or you get Makoto wishing that her dad was alive and all that stuff. And so like it's all it all kind of built naturally from their interactions to what he ends up creating for everybody. And I very much appreciated that. Like he doesn't even make himself happy in that moment. Like he doesn't give himself the girl that he had to lose to kind of get his abilities and all that stuff and all that. Like so he he even puts everybody else's kind of like his version of everybody else's happiness before his own, which I thought is a very interesting and compelling twist on how we usually kind of would see that story play out. Of like,
oh, for sure.
He's doing all this and giving everybody their fantasy versions of things, but he's also giving himself the fantasy version. The fact that he didn't. It almost feels like this weird, like twisted selflessness that again I think doesn't address like the real issue. It is just trying to gloss over things instead of having people confront their pains and frustrations, because how sustainable is a world like that where everybody got what they wanted at a certain point in time, but at some point in time, like Makoto's dad still has to die at some point. So how where does that?
Well, you meet
when
Wakaba.
does that
like that's
illusion...
crazy. You meet Wakaba.
Exactly. Yeah. Like when do those those illusions start to fall apart? Out like if the Phantom Thieves hadn't gone after him or whatever, like how long would that have continued to play out? Not too long, really. The world would have started. I mean, as you kind of touch on, Cam, like there are people already that are kind of like seeing through the cracks of this weird little world that it seemed like it seemed like a natural conclusion that things would have ended. I was not expecting him to become like a giant robot man in the final boss fight kind of thing of the game. But
I will say, actually, in the opposite end, I think that as the longer it goes on, the better he gets at reading the cognition of individuals on a greater mass, and that you would actually see him grow in his power. Like his persona would only grow more powerful, and its ability to overwrite reality would only grow more powerful. And I think if you let him be, he would dominate. Like essentially his Because at the end of the day, if you shove enough cake in front of a fat guy, the fat guy's gonna eat the cake. Doesn't matter that he's been cake free for 90 days. You shove enough cake in front of him, eventually he'll take that easy way out. I use that as an analogy that only I'm allowed to use on this podcast. Nobody else is allowed to use that analogy.
That's fair. That reminds me, I got Ring Fit Adventure myself.
Oh, nice! It's actually a super intense game. I was not anticipating it to have I thought I'll just do it day after day, 2 days in a row. Nope, can't do it. Can't do 2 days in a row.
I've not loaded mine up
it's
yet.
Very,
but
very
it
good.
arrived.
It's very good. It's very fun. But I've had to take a couple days off because, oh boy. Anyway.
Fair.
But I will.
But yeah.
I was
so just in general, I guess.
Point, yeah. But back to your point, I think it is. I think eventually it wouldn't it wouldn't just gloss over. I think it would just start embedding itself deeper and deeper into the roots of the consciousness of humanity.
Okay. Interesting dynamic. Good thing the Phantom Thieves came in and saved the day then.
Yep.
I like that you have to there's that moment where you have to go talk to everybody individually and get to see basically their perfect version of reality. And I'm and because at first I was definitely, at least for me, I was okay, I gotta go talk to everybody. I gotta break this version of reality. And then it was I guess you can go do it in kind of, I guess, whatever order you end up doing it in. But I went and talked to Futaba and Sojiro, and they're all I did that in the middle after I had already talked to a couple people. And that was the first time where when you go and they're just having a family day out with Wakaba and Sojiro and Futaba. And I'm just oh my God, do I actually just ruin this for everyone? Do I actually I was I guess you have to, I have to tell everyone hey, this isn't the actual reality. This isn't real. But that was when I started to feel bad about it. I felt I had this thing where I'm is it valid to just kind of let Maruki win and let everybody have this? Have this, but ultimately I was no, this is fake. It's not real. We need to have the real reality. And Joker's method of having people kind of face the things that they're struggling with and grow past it is the much better version to go with. But I was I like that you kind of got to see everybody's idyllic version of their own life, and that was the one to me that was really impactful. Is you get to basically see this family that doesn't get to exist.
Yeah, there were some very heartbreaking kind of moments that you had to break up. I remember that. I remember Haru with her father, excited, and her father being super supportive and everything, and also alive. And yeah, you kind of having to ruin that for them.
I think a hard one also was Yusuke, because Yusuke was well, in this version, Madarame is actually who he was pretending to be, and supporting Yusuke and helping Yusuke realize his dream rather than just using him. And that was super sad too, because it's not only is Madarame alive, but the Phantom Thieves had to change Madarame's heart. They had to that got erased, and that is a pinnacle point where it's just so how did we meet if we didn't change Madarame's heart? And so Yusuke doesn't only have to quote unquote lose his father figure again. He also has to realize that he's the one that put him in, he's the one that caused him to confess. B, that it was that he let his mother die. And then C, took advantage of Yusuke and all these other artists, and it's there's no nobody gets this happy ending that they want. It's about struggling and overcoming things and dealing with your actual problems. Sai and Makoto, their dad being alive, just
Yeah.
But Wakabai I think is the worst one, because you meet her.
Yeah. You actually have those those chats and conversations, and you see how happy Futaba is, and how I guess she's not the wacky introvert or something. She's more well adjusted because she grew up with a mom in that faux reality kind of thing that we get for a few scenes. Yeah, it was again just gut wrenching that they tease you with that of yeah, this is their perfect moments and their perfect scenes, and you have to take that away from them because you know better, because you see through the cracks of what Maruki is doing, and like the fact that it's only you and Akechi that like know that something is up is like, oh, that sucks that like you're grouping me in with Akechi on this.
I like that because like I
Um,
get like Joker is super smart and I feel like he is like, hey, this is really weird, and he obviously never buys in, so he kind of sees the cracks. But I like that, like, yeah, I guess the only other person that would kind of be naturally resistant to this and also smart to like pay attention to things and kind of see the cracks is like Akechi. And then I like that, like for me, where I was like, I don't like Akechi that much, or especially for like all the things he does. So I'm like, I like that it's like, okay, well now we are forced to work together here because now we're on the same side no matter what.
And
yeah,
it's
yeah,
not us lying to each other that we're working together. We have to honestly work together now.
yeah. And I love the fact that he's like, yeah, well, I clearly died, so something's up because I'm back.
He's like, I'm missing an
And
entire month
that's
of my
how
life. Like, that's not
yeah,
possible.
that's how he knows something is awry there.
I will say about Maruki and like his So it's interesting that Maruki, when he awoke his persona awoke at the key moment where he changed his fiance's cognition to erase the pain that she had about her parents' death. And it's not just sad because like he like is willing to sacrifice even the semblance of the relationship that he has with this woman, but like you mentioned, he doesn't change reality so that he gets his fiance back. He doesn't change reality that like he's recognized for his efforts and people respect him. Like he doesn't get his dream really, but at the same time he has, and I think it boils down to this: is that if he had to sacrifice what he wants for somebody else to be happy, then that's fine if that's the sacrifice that everything has to make for it. And it becomes this twisted, and it goes to the point of like these other adults when you actually like find out why they're so twisted and messed up is for Madarame, it's he recognized his failure as a painter, and so he did everything he could to get success in it no matter what. Haru's father, deeply traumatized from his childhood and his early years as a businessman, dealing with his father's ineptitudes and debt and problems, led to his ruthless behavior that evolved over time as he sunk further and further and like got more twisted up in his problems. And it happens to every single one of these people. And it ends up happening kind of inverted with Maruki, where yeah, Maruki's doing everything for for what he says is the sake of everybody else, but in reality, he's justifying his own loss with his actions, and it's becoming more twisted because it's not real. Like these aren't real people that you've brought back to life; they're cognitions that you've brought back to life, and it's not real. Like you're putting people in this reality against their will, lying to them, lying and giving them this hope and this feeling that these people are alive. And it goes into Akechi as well, because that's for Joker. That's what Akechi is. Is this he never got to settle things with Akechi, and that's what really makes the Akechi's death poignant and tragic and sad, while at the same time, like because Akechi never has to answer for what he's done either. And so it's this open wound that's left in the original Persona 5 story that they try to heal over, but then it's shown that it's integral to Joker's growth as a character that he does have this broken, messed up relationship with Akechi that never gets like it, and it fits into reality. We all have relationships that we never get closure on, that we never get to close the book on, that it's always left open, and to a point where like it might even be left open and we don't get an opportunity to close it, and or have the opportunity to get the opportunity to close it. Rather, it's people die, people leave, people move, things change in our lives, and we don't have the opportunity to find that closure. And Maruki reads that Joker wants that closure with Akechi so badly. That's the dialogue option. Like, I still have your glove. Like, you can't die here because I still have your glove. Like, we still have to settle this. That's a dialogue choice you have when Akechi's about to die. And for Maruki's kind of twisted, and he never gets to the point of being depraved like the other ones do, but it really, if you think about it, it was only a matter of time before he starts getting depraved. Because you can only twist up good so much to bend it to fit your ideals. Like, when you try to take what's right and what's good and what's true and twist it to satisfy your wants and your desires, that's when you get a palace. That's when you become part of, like, you look at Sai. Sai wanted justice, and she wanted justice so badly she let the idea of winning and the competitiveness of her career as a woman in her career sector twist up to the point where she became, she became a palace ruler, and a brutal, terrible one at that. I don't know, like, and it was only a matter of time before Maruki gets to this point, because his from his perspective, it 100% is, like, we see it early on, like, well, he maybe, like, he's not trying to do bad, but eventually he will, because in order.
I mean, like, the fact that, like, he thinks it's a foregone conclusion that he's won and that he will win, and that, like, the world will want his reality more than they want what the Phantom Thieves will bring. He basically says, like, well, I guess we're gonna have to do this. Here's when we're gonna do this. But yeah, he doesn't, like, he retreats to his own, like, palace, and you can't, like, encounter him in the real world and all that stuff, because of that, because that's where he is putting all of his time and all of his efforts and stuff. And it's like it's a very interesting approach that I'm glad they explored that, because that was, like, the one element of that kind of story that, I mean, it felt very fresh and it felt very new, compared to all of the other, like, when you look at the original palaces, like the Seven Deadly Sins and all that stuff, it was cool to see what they were going to bring in terms of a new palace. And I love that it was, this idea of, like, hey, yeah, this guy isn't corrupted by one of the Seven Deadly Sins. He's almost like the Pandora's box allegory of, like, he's bringing hope back into the world, but it's still, not what the world really needs or really wants.
Well,
it is,
I think it's,
this Persona twisted version of it.
I think it's a more of an allegory towards the first sin. Like, we dealt with the Seven Deadly Sins. Now this is the original sin. Knowledge, like, the idea of knowledge is this, because when you get to the top of his palace, you realize he's created a Garden of Eden.
Yeah,
and his persona's Adam something or other, which is essentially Adam as perfected in the Garden of Eden, is the idea. And so, like that's his true persona, not Azazoth, which is that's a, like, demon that has to do with knowledge and, like, the true knowledge of whatnot with the tentacle stuff, but his true persona is Adam in his perfection in the Garden of Eden, and even his outfit is like this philosopher king. Like, his persona fighting combat outfit is this philosopher king version of himself, and his mental image of what his treasure is a torch. So all of his stuff has to do with things like knowledge, which, for anybody who doesn't know, the apple in the Garden of Eden came from the tree of knowledge. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
So, and it's and when Eve bites it, and is this an example of, like, so he changed the cognition of his fiance so that she lives a happy life. So she bit the apple. And is this his version of not biting the apple? It pulls a lot into this kind of allegory of Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden and the concept of original sin, especially after you just beat Yabaloth, which is essentially just, like, the cognition of what people, like, believe God to be. This holy grail, this personification of godhood, that you then have to, like, fight your way through, like, a giant Memento bone corpse up to heaven to fight him. Like, it's very paralleled. So, and then, like, the fact that Joker is his persona, his mythical persona is Sataniel. Like, it's great, man. It's so good. Like, it's so good.
Yeah. I mean, you just in the way you talk about this stuff, I'm like, you clearly are way more into, like, what the meanings of all the personas actually mean. Like, the biggest thing I've ever thought about any of these personas was, I remember going to Disneyland after playing Persona 5 and being like, oh, hey, there's Captain Kidd's right across the street from, like, the gates of Disneyland. Like, there's just a restaurant out there that is, like, I want to say a seafood restaurant right off of one of the kind of side streets away from Disneyland, and I just remember seeing that and being like, oh, hey, like from Persona, neat. So yeah, I definitely like do not at all read into as much with the personas as you do, but I appreciate that
I
you
so
are
have.
the absurdly knowledgeable lore master on that front. So with that, let's. I don't know if there are any kind of closing thoughts that people want to tackle. Frank, any closing thoughts on Persona 5 Royal?
The last thing I would just want to bring up, because I know we kind of covered a lot, was I was curious from you guys, because I think they call it out in the story, but did you notice that Dr. Maruki was standing on the other end of the street when they come out of Kamoshida's palace?
Yes.
Because I was curious, I was just curious because they call it out, and I noticed when he was there, like when it happened the first time, and then they don't ever address it until they call it out later, and I kind of forgot about it. But that's why I was
That
just
happened to me too,
curious
yeah.
if you guys noticed.
I
I
didn't.
picked up on it. I picked up on it right away, and by then I had also gotten the light spoiler that Dr. Maruki has a palace, and so I figured, oh, this is kind of like his introduction to like the cognition stuff.
Yeah, I didn't catch it, but like seeing the flashback to it and the real reveal of it, I was like, oh, that's neat. That's like this game's version of the pancakes moment, where Akechi obviously kind of like lets the mask slip a little bit. That comes back into play much later in the game. So yeah, I did not catch it, and so I appreciated kind of like, oh, that's an interesting like tease and reveal kind of moment.
Because I definitely thought that was cool, especially when they do kind of call back to it. Because like I know I it just because I know I noticed it like when it happened because we they just walk out of the in that alleyway and that's just the normal scene from the first game. But I was like, oh my god! I was like, Dr. Maruki is just staring down this alleyway right now, like as we're standing here talking about this. And then because they don't address it for so long, I was just like, okay, I guess that must be nothing, and I just kind of moved on. But I'm glad that it was all it was like you said it was the pancakes moment. It was there for the entire time, and you just have to see it. And obviously, I guess new game plus wise, that's probably way crazier to see. But
Yeah.
I was just like, man, that's it's cool that that's just happened. That's there.
Yeah, they're like I remember this time going in. I don't know if I caught it like or if I was paying too much attention to it like when I did New Game Plus the first time around. But this time, knowing that having played through the story twice, like I love little moments in the early days where like you see Haru, wandering around the halls or something like that, months before you're going to meet her in game. Just kind of like, oh, yep, I know that that's going to be an important person to me down the line, and just kind of seeing a lot of those little moments, even with like completely, trend side characters and stuff like that, like
Yeah.
like passing by people on the outside of Shujin Academy that end up being, they're talking about a thing that's going to end up being one of your mementos or quests or something like that. Just catching it with the knowledge of hindsight, being able to appreciate a lot of those little elements in a like subsequent playthrough of the game. I appreciate that kind of stuff. So yeah, like knowing that if I were to go back and play it, I would, keep an eye out or see Dr. Maruki in that moment, and be like, oh, yep, that is setting up for where the game goes with him 90 hours from now. It's a cool little moment. How about you, Cam? Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I have a few. Primarily, I want to say that love this game. Love, love, love it. It's a perfect 10 in my heart. I think it's the definitive. I think it's the definitive Persona game that exists right now. I would also want to ask the panel here, and I want to separate it into two different categories because this is a conflict that I've had throughout my time playing the Persona 5, well, back to the original and now is, so as an adult man, now being 30 years old, playing the character who is a 17-year-old teenage boy, when it came to romance, who was best girl and why? Like, and I'm breaking it down to adult best girl and like underage best girl in that case, or same age girl best girl. There we go.
I mean, in my canon playthrough, which would still be kind of my original Persona playthrough, I picked Makoto. For the sake of Persona 5 Royal, I went with Yasumi. And then I think in my New Game Plus of Persona 5, I did Futaba. I still, across those three, prefer Makoto. Just I think her personality ultimately lines up more with my own, and kind of dynamic. In terms of like the adults, I would go with the doctor.
Oh, you mean Kasumi?
I'm so,
Did you say Kasumi or Yasumi? Like Yasumi?
I said Kasumi.
Okay, sorry, I misheard you. I just googled really quickly. I'm looking. I'm like, who the hell was Yasumi?
Yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, basically for the sake of this game, I wanted to experience like her romance option as like the new experience in the game. And while I appreciated it, and I love the like the relationship that she and Joker have, where he's basically there supporting her as she goes out and tries to achieve her dreams and everything. I still think of Makoto as kind of like my main Persona 5 squeeze, and to the point that like when I was playing through Persona 5 Royal, I had committed to like, okay, I'm gonna romance Kasumi, but then like Makoto comes into the story, and I was like, oh, I missed this. I want to nope, got to stick with Kasumi. But I strongly considered being like, no, I'm just gonna go back to my comfort there of Makoto. But yeah, in terms of like the adult, and this like I think we've touched on this in other shows in the past or something like that. But it is like it's uncomfortable playing a 16 or 17-year-old kid or whatever, and having the option to romance like fellow students younger than you, and then also like the adults in the world that are any number of years older than you, including your teacher and stuff like that. It's like, oh, that's like really inappropriate. So I like Kawakami is one that I'm like, I'd never want to experience that relationship. And same with the journalist who comes across a little too predatory for my liking. But the doctor, I think, is the one that I
Takumi?
gravitate to, in terms of like if I were to pursue one of the adults, it would be the doctor.
In terms of the adults, I'm definitely with you there. I mean, she's I think pretty much the easy choice for me when it comes to that. And I'm always honest, where I'm like, I like Kawakami too, but I also like she's a very good person, and she just got wrapped up in a lot of bullshit, and she was just trying to make it right. And like I like her social link and her confidant, but when it comes to like the romance option, when you're talking about the adults, I'm definitely more like Takami. I think would be my choice. Um, I'm pretty much, I guess, with you again on this one too, or I guess with pretty much everything you said, because like originally I wanted to romance Makoto in the base game of Persona 5, and I couldn't because of my stats. So I ended up romancing, I think it was I forget though. I've done too many playthroughs at this point. New Game Plus, I did Makoto, and now in Royale, in my first playthrough, I was with Kasumi as well. And it's pretty much like you said. Like I like Kasumi a lot, and she has a great relationship like with Joker, and it's awesome to just be there and be like supportive of her. But I definitely overall, I'm like, I think Makoto is probably, yeah, like the best girl, if you want to throw it like that, like in terms of like the party members and like the people who are kind of like Joker's age. I also will totally give a shout out to the other girl I like a lot in this game, Hifumi. Doesn't get enough love. I like her a lot.
Hells yeah, Hifumi is definitely top tier girl.
No, absolutely, and I don't know if you guys saw this, but I believe it was added in Royale. There, when you take Makoto to the bookstore that Hofumi takes you to, Hofumi is there, and then they get to meet each other, and they have, I swear to God, the best interaction in the entire game, because it's like the two girls that I like, and they immediately hit it off because they're both just smart, and they're just being smart with each other. And I'm like, oh God, like I was so like that was one of the scenes where I'm like, this is amazing. I like this is what's great about like Persona and Persona 5.
Yeah, I like that little random offshoot scene as well.
Well, I like Hifumi because it's like one, it's she goes to a different school than you. She goes to Yusuke school, and it's fun because like she goes to a different school, but also because she is like she's dealing with like her story is she deals with like some very public stuff. She's a very like her life is in the spotlight for because of her age and what she wants to do with her life, which is play shogi professionally. Um, and like it's a competitive, cutthroat world, and she gets involved in like the scandal with her mom. It turns out her mom was fixing stuff so that she could leave shogi to then model full time, basically fulfilling her mom's dream. of like being like a television personality when she just really wants to just play shogi, and you just like you're there for her, and she asks you, she's like, so did you just really want to learn battle tactics, which is a weird thing to do, or did you want to like meet me? And it's like, girl, you know I was here for you. Like, girl, I have like I'm doing like the like one hand over like a closed hand thing where it's like, girl, you know I was here for you. Because like you meet her in Hawaii and she's being accosted by some dudes, and you're like, yo, it's cool, I got you. And then like you can hang out with her and spend like basically have a Hawaii date with her. And then her Christmas date is super cute and royal because you guys stop to pick up like some last minute cakes, and then like your Valentine's Day with her is super awesome because she's just this absolute kind-hearted, sweet person who's brilliant, like absolutely brilliant and intelligent, and picks up on things super quickly. Like when she susses out that you're a phantom thief, it's like it makes sense, like how you deduce this because you're a really smart person.
Yeah,
And
I
yeah,
enjoyed a lot of. I mean, like all of them really are or not all of them. The predator aside and teacher aside, I think a lot of the relationship dynamics can be fun. So who would be your adult romance option?
I mean, I think we all agree it's Takemi.
Takemi, yeah.
Takemi is definitely the like honestly out of all the adult options. First off, you lied to her about your age, so it's like on her end, she's not doing like she didn't start doing anything wrong by being attracted to you because you lied about your age. You say that you're getting ready for your entrance exams, which would mean that you're like set like you're like 18 going on 19. Um, like because you like that's how you start off. You want these like super medications that she's rumored to have, and you're like, well, I need to study for my university exams. And so she goes, oh, okay. But that means right off the bat she thinks you're older than you say you are. And while she eventually deduces it out, like sometime and she are like you're kind of this like hero guy. You're willing to like put your body on the line to test this drug for this girl that she wants to save, for like a patient that she failed to save before that she wants to save now, and it's all sorts of stuff, man. Like it's great. It's great. Takemi is definitely my favorite adult option. I love all the adult characters, even the Predator, because when she's not being a predator, she's actually trying to pursue actual justice as a journalist.
Yeah.
And so like that, like her, if you don't pursue a romance option with her, she comes off as actually being like a very admirable character. But heaven help you if you choose to pursue a relationship with her, because yeah, the predatorial stuff comes out, and it's like, oh no.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, cool. Yeah. My final thoughts, I guess, would be great game and definitely the definitive version of this game. Like I said, I wished there had been like a DLC version of this, that I could have experienced the new stuff without the whole rest of the game that I'd already played twice. But I get it, and I like back when I played the original Persona 5, it was like they're gonna do some kind of golden version of this that maybe I should wait for, but I wanted to be part of the conversation with all my other friends that were diving into Persona. So, it's my own doing, and that's why largely like I was not planning on coming back for this one. I'm glad I ultimately did, because I did like the new stuff, and it was especially coming off of my 90 hours with Final Fantasy VII Remake, which I loved, going into another 110 hours of this, like made very much like the early days of quarantine and all that stuff. It helped pass the time when I was very much looking for things to do. So it came at like a great time, and if people are still kind of like stuck in and working from home or stuff like that, this is definitely something to consider checking out. Hopefully you didn't sit through this whole episode without having checked it out, but yeah, I thought it was a great version of this game to experience, and it was nice being back with a lot of those characters. So shout out to Persona 5 Royal. And with that, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you guys for sitting down with me to discuss kind of this full-on spoiler cast of the episode. Let's go around the table with any kind of metaphorical plugs that we, or the metaphorical table for any plugs that we have. Cameron, you can follow Cameron at RevCabot. Anything you want to give a nod to or give a shout out to out there in the world?
Not right now, no.
Okay. You can follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes. Anything you want to plug or give a shout out to, Frank?
Not at the moment.
Okay. You follow me at Trevor J. Starkey, and yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I'll be sitting down at some point this weekend to do kind of a quick solo version of that D Plus show. I don't even know what I'm gonna sit down and look at there, but I guess I will plug. You can sit down and with Cam and Mai's episode last week talking about Artemis Fowl. If you want to suffer through that film, you can certainly do that as well. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, and you can check out thatnerdysite.com for any of the latest content that we're putting out there. And if you did like what you hear, please again rate, review, like, subscribe, maybe even consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Every patron gets early access to a monthly bonus episode of the show. This month is featuring Jazz and Frank talking about detective cop shows and procedurals and all that, like a whole bunch of the USA Network kind of shows that were coming up that I enjoyed in that conversation. Thank you for listening. Stay nerdy and be good to each other.